The content creators themselves are probably never going to stop. There's just an unbelievable amount of reward for it. I think that the only people that realistically could do something to stop this would be the friends and coworkers of these people. The people we should really come down on are the mentally well people around them that are leeching off of the mental health episodes.
You probably shouldn't go tell people to harass him with him in real life or anything like that, but beyond that, I don't think that I have any real responsibility to help FouseyTube's mental health. I don't know him. I'll never meet him. I just want to talk about him online, and he is a public figure. I think the responsibility for his mental health should fall upon the people in his life.
I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, this idea, and this is blowing my mind, that no one here thinks that the platforms have any responsibility to deal with someone who is having legitimate mental illness. Like, if you see someone getting drunk at a bar and you're a bartender, there's a point where you cut them off, and you should cut them off.
Way different. The problem, though, is that you're the one supplying the alcohol, and there's pretty concrete ways to keep track of, like, being drunk.
Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WhickTV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Today, we will be discussing the role mania plays in content creation and the ways we incentivize, encourage, or fail to manage these public displays of mental breakdowns. Fousey's skyrocketing success and the huge spotlight we've put on him during what seems to be an ongoing, unmedicated episode has caused quite a few people to ask themselves, what responsibilities do we have as creators? Do you have as audience members? And do platforms have to consider someone's mental well-being when platforming them? Is there any responsibility at all? What I want us to try to tackle here today is what drives this phenomenon, what tools do we have to intervene if we want to intervene, and how intervention might go wrong, like how we might infantilize others or when we try to help them. So thanks again for being here today. I want to give each of you a brief, concise opening thoughts on this, tell people who you are, and we're going to start here with Brianna Wu. Go ahead.
Boy, my name is 𝙎𝙬𝙗𝙧𝙞𝙗𝙧. I'm executive director of Rebellion PAC. I think there are a lot of these topics I have a more nuanced view on. Maybe it's just because I'm pissed off today and tired, but I have very little empathy for this situation. This particular guy has all the resources in the world to make better choices. And the thing is, I'm also old enough to understand this is not a new phenomenon. You know, mentally unhealthy people going on TV and it being a spectacle. We had it with Jerry Springer. We've had it with Big Brother. We had it with Real World. My parents had their own generation's version of it. Yeah, even Richard Simmons, who is well before my time, was somebody, he like disappeared a few years ago and they found him. And like the basic thing with him is he was so mentally unwell the entire time he's putting this super extroverted personality on TV that there was just nothing there, and it just mentally ravaged him. So this is literally nothing new. The guy obviously needs to get off of streaming. He needs to do anything else with his life, but he's not going to because, like so many of us, he fucking loves the attention. So he'll live with his choices.
Fair enough. Destiny, what you got?
There's something between like personal responsibility and audience responsibility that I'm getting at here, and I think it's gonna be like coworker or colleague or friend responsibility. I don't think that the responsibility is necessarily on the audience to police it, because if anything, I'd say realistically, because this is never going to happen. I mean, I fully admit that I will watch these breakdowns and I will laugh the entire time. Whether I'm watching Fousey or Ice Poseidon or Darius and Xena, I'm here for all of it, okay? I will watch it, I will laugh along, I might even fucking subscribe. The content creators themselves are probably never going to stop because, like Brianna said, there's just an unbelievable amount of reward for it. And if mental illness travels well with any partner, that partner would be attention-seeking behavior. So that's never going to change. I think that the only people that realistically could do something to stop this would be the friends and coworkers of these people. I think that more so than chastising people like Fousey, the people we should really come down on are the mentally well people around them that are leeching off of the mental health episodes. I think those are the most disgusting people in these situations. And that's how I feel about it.
Guess we'll get into it as we go. Not so erudite. What you got for us?
Yeah, it's probably not like overly novel. I think exploiting mentally ill people is bad, obviously, and I think so. The main people who I think have an issue with is going to be anybody around them that's enabling them. So in the Kanye West situation, I think like Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos were trying to like milk his manic episode as much as possible. That was really fucking messed up. And then I think content creators who are bringing them on to platform them like personally directly with the goal of specifically like exploiting them and like triggering them and getting them to say crazy stuff while they're manic. I think those people are pretty shit too. I don't really have an issue with viewers. I don't really have an issue with people covering it like secondhand. I think it's mostly on people who are like actively and intentionally trying to exploit the individual.
Hey, the people who cover this content think they have no responsibility. We'll see how it goes for them. Speaking of covering mentally ill people, Turkey Tom, welcome. How's it going?
How's it going? Yeah, I guess I'm in somewhat of a unique position to talk about this because I have made hundreds of thousands of dollars talking about, I don't know, crazy people online. My basic position is that, if you actively engage with the person in question, like let's say I was, calling FouseyTube on stream and trying to convince him that his paranoid delusions were valid and telling him that I sent in his girlfriend, which one guy actually did, I think that would be pretty fucked up. But I think if you're just talking about him, you don't have a real responsibility to positively or negatively influence him. You probably shouldn't go tell people to harass him and fuck with him in real life or anything like that. But beyond that, I don't think that I have any real responsibility to help FouseyTube's mental health. I don't know him. I'll never meet him. I just want to talk about him online. And he is a public figure. I think the responsibility for his mental health should fall upon the people in his life. His mom, his dad, his friends, rather than random content creators. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for being here. Now we'll get into it in the open, I'm sure. Last but certainly not least, our mentally ill representative, Xena. Hi.
Wait, are you calling me mentally ill?
It's a joke. Roll with it.
I know.
What you got?
I know. What was the question?
What should we do about Fousey? Do we have any responsibility towards Fousey? Like, do people who are having a mentally ill breakdown, right? Is it okay to cover them? To invite them onto our streams, to talk to them? Like, what level of responsibility do people have here?
I honestly think like it's okay because we're bringing awareness to it. So I think it's kind of okay to cover it at least, but like exploiting it in the sense of like if you're bringing them on stream and you know they're not okay and like they're self-harming, that's different. If you're like, look at this chick, oh she's cutting herself, that's different. But if someone's having like episodes and you're bringing them on and talking to them and talking about it, like bringing mental illness awareness to the platform, like that's different. I don't care.
A lot of people don't care. Wow, this is kind of shocking to me.
We needed a big. I just realized because you made that fucking comment and now I see it. We're all kind of in the same boat, and that all of us make money covering mentally ill people. Why didn't we?
I don't.
Yeah, today I have brought you together, right? To kind of demonstrate as kind of like an example of how little, like how much money incentivizes us not to give a shit about other people, right? Not to give a flying shit. We make.
I don't think it's just money. Like, we don't know this guy. I don't know this guy. I'll never meet him. He's a 35-year-old fucking man. He's double my age. Should I have to be responsible for his mental health?
We're truly talking about the human condition here. Like, everybody is drawn to these types of like dramatic people breaking up and like breaking up like mentally and like all the crazy shit. Like Brianna said earlier, like some of those popular shows, I think it's Brianna that brought this up, like Jerry Springer and Maury and stuff. That's not an accident, right? It's not an accident that people watch Jersey Shore because they want to see the crazy fights and the people cheating on each other and everything else. So yeah, I don't think we're unique here at all.
I have compassion for somebody. Like, there was a police video I saw recently of like a teenager that was high on some drugs and they were in a situation with the cops, right? They're having a breakdown. This is a situation I had empathy for, right? As a child, they're getting their start in the world, they're not making a choice. That is a very different situation than a 35-year-old man who, if you watch his content, he's clearly addicted to the attention in a crazy way. He's got every single opportunity to go get better. He's got a therapist. He has made hits on H3H3 about his path to better mental health. And I know this sounds like a Republican talking point, but at some point, I do believe in personal responsibility for adults. I also think that in this space, one of the best things I've seen is mocking truly terrible people. I'm not going to bring up two people that I'm thinking of, but Destiny, they've been key figures in your saga. And I think it has been really good for everybody to look at their behavior and just obliterate them, because it is so far out of the bounds of anything that is normal, healthy, moral, anything. So I do think mocking is a moral action in a lot of situations.
I think my pushback here, I'm going to take the very progressive cuck position, is I think one of the issues is that it is so hard. We see people like XQC even on Dr. K's talk. It is so hard to break any sort of feedback system that is rewarding you with attention. Even the money is secondary. The attention is unbelievable. I can't imagine. I always said this. Believe it or not, at one point in my life, I was quite narcissistic. If I would have started streaming when I was like 16, I can't imagine how horrible of a person I would be to have that much reinforcement, that much social validation, that much, because when you streaming is truly like the maker or breaker of your psyche. Because when you push that go live button and you make money, people are basically like, I love you, I support you, and I'm giving you money because I like you so much. Even if it's hate watching, even if it's people that say they don't like you. So I can't imagine having a mental illness that you drastically need to get fixed, but you found a way to capitalize off of and make money off of that mental illness. And you're getting so much positive validation and reinforcement for having it.
And what's even worse, perhaps, is the people who see these smaller creators, right? And then will publicly platform them and showcase them and spotlight them, do whole documentary series on them, right? And this just draws more and more attention. It's like supplying a heroin addict with heroin. Yes, it's, again, at some point they have to take responsibility, but what responsibility do the people supplying the drug to the addict have in this case? Dina, you wanted to say something? You had your hand up.
I was gonna say something about like the age factor. Like if you're going like the teenager getting caught with drugs, having the mental breakdown in the back of the car. That's the video you're talking about, right? It doesn't mean she had any mental disorder. She was making the decision to run around gangbang. Like I've seen her Instagram. Like she was gangbanging. She had a breakdown because she got caught. I'm saying that as someone who got caught doing crime. Like she only had a breakdown because she got caught. It's not like she was struggling and doing drugs and caught up in this lifestyle, versus how you made comment about somebody being 30 years old. That means he's been struggling. He's been this live streamer, as Destiny said. He's been having this attention, monetizing off his mental health or his mental instability all this time. So it's programmed now in his mind that it's okay to take breaks from your medication and fucking go crazy because it's money, it's attention, da da da. Versus a girl who's selling drugs with her boyfriend, gets caught and has a breakdown in the car because she's facing prison. I don't think that that's really comparable and the same, because we don't know her mental state. We don't know if she's, having any actual issues, so I don't think that that was really a fair assessment. And then I also wanted to say, I agree with Destiny on that about the streaming and monetizing off their mental problems. But a lot of times too, like I have mental issues too. I mean, yeah, I can be crazy, but I think sometimes like what you see online, like when you're streaming or making content with it, you turn it up like 20% or more. Some people turn it up way more, and they make the issue that really would, like, if they wouldn't really behave like that on the regular if the cameras weren't off, but as soon as the camera's on, they're going to turn it up more because they know people like drama, people like entertainment, it's content. And then as soon as the camera's off, they're just chilling like it's whatever. I don't think it's always as serious as we see on camera. Is what I'm saying.
Do we think it's wise for Kick to give Fousey a $15 million contract? Like,
I don't believe that.
I don't think he got that much money.
I don't either.
You think he's just lying? It's just kind of something he said?
If it's not reported in mainstream media, bro, there's like one Twitter account that just tweets like random dollar amounts and people take it at face value. Like,
Yeah.
And the other person we're expected to trust is Fousey tube, who's like a pathological liar.
Yeah.
So I just don't. I don't really trust him. Maybe he got 2 mil. Maybe. If
the
he's
way that
lucky.
these Kick contracts work, from my understanding, and possibly somebody that might have one, is most of these are done at hourly rates anyways. There might be other incentives, but like I'm pretty sure that most of them have been the same. I think other people.
So he doesn't just get wired like $15 million.
No, yeah. You're typically like you're getting paid like on depending on how much you stream and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as sorry, you can go.
Go ahead, Turkey.
Okay, Turkey, yo, we're Turkey.
So
okay.
polite.
Wick,
First name basis.
honestly, Wick, I would say, you talked about the documentary series. I see that as just part of like Destiny said, the human condition. Everybody likes watching a trash fire. There are entire YouTube channels. One of, I have one with almost 1 million subscribers. There's Sunny V2. He's got millions of subs. These are all the, channels that all the streamers like to react to and steal their content. Shout out Destiny. And basically the whole meme behind it. The whole fucking point is to watch someone's life devolve. And some of the most popular videos of the last few years are watching someone's life devolve into a fucking trash fire. And so you can argue like, oh, well, maybe the people making the content, you know, should be held responsible somewhat for fueling the fire. But it's like, if millions of people are out there ready to watch it, then if Sunny V2 goes away, if I go away, there's going to be someone else to meet that. Ultimately, you have to place the responsibility on the person interacting with the world rather than the world they live in. If someone like FouseyTube has the cognitive like decision making skills, which I think he does, if he really wanted to, he could just fuck off and not, you know, get all this attention online. If someone has those skills and chooses not to use them and chooses to make the wrong decision, then I fail to see how that's my or anyone else's responsibility. I don't know him. I'm not his mom. I don't even have DMs with him. I couldn't message him if I wanted to. Now that being said, the way like that you interact with these people is important, and there are, you know, degrees to which you can do that. If you're lying about them, if you're exaggerating claims, if you're telling people fuck with this guy, go fuck with him, I want more content, that's fucked up. But if you're just talking about him, if you know, like I do, add several harassment disclaimers and tell people don't fuck with this guy, we're just gonna watch it go down. Then I think that will be reflected in the comment section and the way the audience interacts. So yeah.
Turkey, I think what you do from the videos I've seen is largely journalistic by nature, right? Like I think you add entertainment values and commentary on top of it. And I'm not saying I agree with your bent on every single video I've seen, but directionally you were doing journalism that is covering these issues and helping the public understand, because I can't watch every single video, right? So I think your conscience is beyond clean. I want to come back to something that Destiny was talking about a second ago, which is the age factor, because I see this a lot. I think you're really correct that it just breaks your brain, all these people that get into this with a childlike desire to be famous, and they don't have any life experience and they don't have any career experience that will help inform things on down the line. They just want to be famous. They want to have that attention. And in my experience in this space, these are consistently the lowest value, least helpful people in this space. These are the people that I feel like they find people that've actually accomplished things in their career and they go after them for clout, or they drama farm for clout, or they show up on these panels and they just do stupid things and they're barely sentient talking about things for clout. It's so obviously an unhealthy dynamic. And there's no solution for it. Like I remember in my journalism program at Ole Miss, it was separated into print and television journalism. And the print people were people like me that were really serious about going and finding sources, making contacts, and going down to the jail, finding out who had been arrested. And the broadcast people were generally like these girls with a desire to be famous, right? That just didn't care about any of that. So this is something that's not going to change. It's human nature. I just think we should discourage it as much as we can, which is why I try not to watch those channels.
Also, as a quick shout out of IDC, I'm sorry, I don't know if my internet's gonna go out because it's storming here. So.
Oh, well, hopefully you don't.
Fair.
We'll
Me
keep
too.
you for as long as we can.
I
get
think-
you. 𝙬𝙚, go ahead.
I think a lot of this that we're like getting into is that in many ways it's like similar to like kind of the mental health field, in that like there's this question of like when is somebody like able to essentially consent and agree to like what's being more or less like done to them. So like even the Jerry Springer show and stuff like this. And I think a really big thing that has to be careful, like when I see people being hyper cautious of being like, you should just never platform and never even cover like the Fousey situation, is that like it's inherently also like taking away like that person, like as like an individual who can make choices. And I understand like in the manic situation, the capacity for making informed decisions is extremely reduced. But I think a lot of the responsibility does ultimately have to be led to exclusively the people that are like willing to exploit them, and the individual themselves, right? So like if Fousey has been aware of his disorder for years, if he has medication and then he opted to stop taking them, I have a lot less sympathy for that individual than somebody who's having their first manic episode ever. They're undiagnosed and they have no idea what's going on, right? These are completely different individuals as far as like being platformed. And then as far as like the platformers go, I think Tom actually said this. There's this distinction we have to make, like, you know, Dr. K will bring people on who have like some level of like mental health issues that are going through an issue, and he'll platform them directly. But then we also have people who will be like 𝙬𝙗𝙗, who are like encouraging them to stop their meds and only pray to God. And so it's like these are obviously different types of ways that you're even engaging with the individual. And I feel like this is so much more nuanced than like, should you platform people who
I
are
think
mentally
another
ill or
part
not?
of it is that people with mental illness don't exist in a vacuum. They will have real consequences on the world. One example about Fousey years ago was that he ran this giant event called FouseyCon where he claimed Drake was going to be going. And thankfully, a lot of people called him out and pointed out that, no, I don't think Drake's going there. And a lot of the other false advertising he was putting out. But he's in the middle of a manic episode. And if he had just been allowed to run rampant, who knows how many people would have, paid money to go to that fucking event. And then gotten, scammed because they thought FouseyTube was telling the truth. That being said, I'm not going to lie and say that I do YouTube, or a lot of commentary channels do YouTube for altruistic reasons, because at the end of the day, we're all here to make, to get a bag, right? But definitely there is some good that can come from raising awareness to some of these situations, and I think that that should not be ignored. That being said, once again, there are people that I've seen who will just make a video about a crazy person, be like, this person's fucking crazy, haha, they're fucking insane, and that's probably kind of fucked up. But there are, once again, levels to this, so
Well,
it's not
what's
so.
I think, I mean, it's
go ahead,
even
Z.
with what Erudite said is a little bit.
Erudite.
Maybe I'm really bad at pronouncing things. Erudite, because as somebody, I don't know what disorder. I didn't really research Fousey like that. And you guys are saying manic, so I'm kind of just assuming.
Like
we're
he has
talking
bipolar.
bipolar.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it is
same.
type 1.
So with that being said, like I've been medicated with bipolar medications before, and I've opted and stopped taking it before. And it's just some medications like bipolar and those medications, I'm not a scientist, but I know like it's still really tricky to get the right medication. It's really hard. So what do? They're medicating you on this, then they want to try you on this, that, and the third. My medication was getting switched around so much. And then I was on one, and when it came to the I say season because my manic episodes last for a season. It's not like a day. It's not a week. I don't know if it's type 1 or type 2, but mine's last for like a season. So the medication that was working when I was on my low, but when I'm hitting my high, the medication did a complete turn, and I was crazy, like running people over. Like I went insane. And then when I stopped taking the medication, I came back on my low, and I was like normal again. So I think it really depends on how his body is reacting to that medication to be like, oh, I can't sympathize with someone who's choosing not to take it. Sometimes you stop taking it because you realize, okay, no, I can't take this shit. Now, did he stop taking it for the sake of he wanted to go crazy and do content? Or did he honestly think, okay, this medication has me feeling fucked up, I can't focus right, it's not doing well for me, I'm depressed more than ever? Like, was it fucking with his lows and highs too much that he wanted to stop? And then, of course, listening to zzerkaa about praying to God. Some people are okay more getting spiritual on it, but I don't think if you're if you're suffering a lot of manic episodes, yes, you should take some form of medication, whether it's the doctor shit or holistic approach, as long as you're doing something that can help you. I think shrooms helps with that better.
I think like
Just real
I think
quick,
once you
Xena,
try-
can you turn up your mic just a smidge? People are saying you're low, but go on.
Oh, sorry.
I think like one of the issues with like mental health specifically that I think is tricky to navigate is that responsibility piece, right? Like once you're given a diagnosis as intense as bipolar, right, there is this long window of trying to figure out your medications, and particularly for women with medications, things that are working for a couple of years might stop working, and then you need to re-update and re-look at it. The main thing is that like if you're aware that you have a diagnosis and you're aware that you're a social media figure, I would basically say there's a certain level of self-responsibility that you have to take in like combining these two things, where like if you have having a safety person being like, hey, you're moving into a manic state, we're like pulling the plug, you're not streaming right now. And I suspect Fousey is probably not doing that. And I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to find out if he's actively resisted that. Like Kanye West is a tricky one where like, he's actively
even then,
resisting
like
help.
with artists and stuff like that have like, I know me when I'm in my, it's crazy, but unfortunately for some of us, like when I'm manic, like now, I mean, I'm not painting, I'm not doing anything, I'm not having any mania. As soon as I hit my manic stage, that's when I'm most creative. I make the most, like I'm writing like crazy. I make crazy good music, and then I have crazy ass paintings. And then once that like season is over, I'm done with art for like a year until I get another 3 to 5 months of a manic episode where I'm going crazy, not talking to people, just getting in my car, going places and painting, and nobody can find me type shit. Like sometimes you realize like, damn, when I'm manic, that's when I'm most creative. So as an artist that's getting paid for it, maybe that's why he wants to do it more, because
that makes sense. But also, if you have a mental illness and you're diagnosed and you're like self-aware enough at least a certain points to know that, I think you have to be able to have some personal responsibility and grapple with the fact that if the consequences of your mental illness hurt other people, then whatever benefit that has to you is like kind of rendered irrelevant. Like and at that point, like, you know,
But did he hurt
even
anybody?
Well, he
Fousey?
almost scammed
It hurt.
people.
It hurt him.
Historically,
he
is what it
assaulted a
sounds
few
like.
people, right?
Yeah.
He hit people. He's hiring security guards and firing them the same day because they can't read his mind and know that he wants a Diet Coke, a Red Bull, and a joint every 3 hours. Like this guy needs to be like medicated on fucking 𝙬𝙗𝙗 or something. He's fucked up. Okay, he needs to be dealt with. He cannot be a public figure in this way. But clearly,
having sex
nobody
with
can
drunk
stop him.
women is that's not defensible in my view.
At the airport, at the fucking
Yeah.
airport.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You're that horny? Like, yeah.
Oh, whoa! It's all coming together. Whoa, because we had a kick or keep, and that was brought up. I didn't know that was that person.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Zena, I
Whoa.
hear what you're saying,
Hold on, let
and
me grab my pizza rolls.
How are you on this panel?
2 seconds.
Zena, I hear what you're saying about, like, it's clear you've got some firsthand experience with this. I've got compassion for that. I know she's gone. But, you know, from my end, I am not a streamer, right? I am a project manager. I've been leading different teams since I was 19 years old. And, you know, mental illness for people on my team has come up routinely, right? Like sometimes you've got people, they're going through depressive episodes, or they're like, it's just, if you work in technology, this stuff comes up. And I take a lot of pride as someone who leads teams in working with people on that. Yeah, I've seen it both ways, right? I've seen it with people that are where they have situations and they come to you, they're like, I'm going through an episode right now. I need some time off. I need a reduced work schedule. Can you not cut my pay? I really can't afford to have less money right now. Can you please work with me? And then it's like, of course, they're being proactive. They're being responsible. That's what we do in a decent society, is you work with people like that. I've also seen the other end of it where it's used to justify asshole behavior, often at the expense of teammates, right? And one of the first jobs of a leader is to protect your team from assholes. So I do think there is, especially for people that are in their 30s, this is enough time to have some responsibility in how you're managing these things and being proactive.
We can talk about the responsibility, and I think we all acknowledge that there is some level of personal responsibility. But at the end of the day, right? At what point can someone be so mentally ill that you just cut their mic, right? Like that the platform itself should just look at what's happening and say, no, end the stream, kill the stream, right?
I don't think it's a platform.
Oh, that's such a lie.
Yeah, I don't agree with
YouTube
platforms.
pulling the plug.
Nope.
Oh, imagine if they fuck up. Like what it
getting arrested though?
And you know how many
Like,
crazy
because, wait.
YouTubers I've met, okay?
But then
Most
what if
of them
somebody's
are
going so
crazy, so-
crazy? Say a platform does do that and someone is going through so much that they take it to the point where they end their life because they're like, oh, they're not letting me talk.
Yeah, like at the
and they
peak of
have
their
that
mania,
crazy-
you rip away
Yes.
their one source of income and attention. Like,
We
Like, they
have
could literally
examples.
snap.
We have examples of YouTubers ending their lives, and it's not because YouTube cut the mic, right?
Yeah.
It's because they were allowed to continue on this, and they like the 𝙎𝙬𝖘𝐻�10 situation in 2019, right? And we have other examples of people just either killing themselves or ruining their lives, like the Wreckful situation. It's not because people cut their mic. In fact, it's the exact
but there's
opposite.
it's always a case by case basis. Like in the future,
Yeah.
you think if Fousey at the peak of his streaming, if he's driving and YouTube cuts his shit, you don't think he's gonna drive right into a pole on purpose? Who knows? What
You
he's
don't
gonna
know.
fucking do.
Yeah, you
I
don't
don't.
know.
I feel like, and I could be wrong. I don't think they would. I think with nobody watching, I think that the incentive to do so would be. I think it's got a higher chance of driving into a pole if the stream stays on.
He's still manic.
I
though.
think
Who
the
knows what he's
bigger
gonna
I
do?
think the bigger issue for like cutting the mic at a platform level with mental health, like it's easy to cut the mic when crime's happening, right? If he's assaulting somebody, that's easy. But when it's mental health, there's such a delicate line between like mental health and just like extreme behavior and like personality quirks or bits that like leaving it up to the platform to decide like, yeah, you're too mentally ill to be here. It would be just a logistics nightmare for YouTube. I don't think
That's
they would
true.
ever do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I really agree. There's no responsibility for the platforms to cut this off. I mean, we've seen CBS. Do you remember I was talking to Wick about this before the show? Do you remember that season of Big Brother where someone was on the house, in the house, and they were very clearly an alcoholic and they're getting blackout drunk, and like CBS kicked them out of the house? I mean, you know, it felt like in that situation, it was so performative, right? Because everybody was tuning in for the ratings, and then they're coming in afterwards with the cameras and covering every second of it breathlessly. I mean, let's just call it what it is. When these big institutions do it, it's to protect their own reputation. They're not doing it out of any,
I don't
heightened
care if
moral.
it's just to
Yeah.
protect their reputation, though. I don't.
Fair.
I mean, like at the end of the day, like this idea, and this is blowing my mind that no one here thinks that the platforms have any responsibility to deal with someone who is having legitimate mental illness. Like if you see someone getting drunk at a bar and you're a bartender, there's a point where you cut them off, and you should cut them off, right? Like I guess I don't know. There are points
Way different. The problem though is that you're the one supplying the alcohol, and there's pretty concrete ways to keep track of like being drunk. How can you tell?
YouTube also is not. YouTube's not a bar. It's like a multi-billion-dollar business. It's a platform. It's basically just the public square where anyone can go say their bullshit. So I don't think that they should have any responsibility for what people do on their platform. If they see a crime being committed, they should absolutely, ban them for that because they're committing a crime on their platform. But beyond that, I think it's hard to push any responsibility on YouTube. And also, I think that would go down a very dangerous hole. Like, how much responsibility does YouTube hold? If somebody's mean on the internet, do they hold that responsibility? I don't think so. But a lot of people these days would probably push for YouTube to try to take accountability for people saying mean words on their platform. And I don't like that line of thinking. I think it's dangerous. Okay, 1984. Remember, bro? Okay.
Sure.
I think the issue is that it's logistically like so. What do you write in your TOS policy? You can't be too severely mentally I don't even know how they would begin.
Stop acting crazy.
To try to enact. Yeah, don't be crazy on our platform. So you can write in things like crime. You can write in things like drug use and profanity, and hopefully mentally ill people will be doing enough of those things on stream that you can cut them there. But you can't write into a policy if you're manic. We reserve the right to pull your platform, because who is YouTube be determining whether you're experiencing a medical condition or not? Right? That's insane. The best that YouTube could maybe do is somewhat shadow ban you, but again, you're still running into there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to feel that that's super ableist pretty quickly as well. So
I guess you could ask YouTube to reach out to the YouTube therapist to help you out, but I also feel like that's probably a bad idea because who knows how many people are crazy on YouTube at any given moment. So I think best case scenario is just people. Yeah, exactly. Great idea. I think people in personal situations, just like if you know someone who's crazy, crazy, mentally ill, if you know someone who's having a manic episode, just reach out to them. Clearly, some people in Fousey's life are trying. Like I think his mom called him on stream. He just tells him to fuck off. Yeah. At that point, I don't think it's the platform's responsibility. I think that someone in his personal life, what about all these streamers like Aiden Ross who personally knows Fousey and is just allowing this shit to happen? He
even invited him to I believe I read this. They invited him to a content house of some sort, right?
He invited him to a content house. They just went to Lil Pump's party. But yeah, that content house is going to be a disaster because as soon as Fousey gets out, he's going to be live streaming, get attention again, and become manic. But I don't think that Twitch has to step in whatsoever. I don't think that's their responsibility. I think that's totally the people around him in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think the biggest thing for me that drives me crazy in this space is that there's one thing to covering it and stuff, but I want at least some people to acknowledge that if you're the person, if you're Aiden Ross, bringing him into this thing and to some degree potentially enabling and exploiting his manicness, which I don't know what Aiden Ross's plan is, so I'm not saying that that's literally happening. I don't want any misgivings that you're kind of a piece of shit exploiting somebody for content views. It feels like there's not that kind of social response that we have to it, but
yeah, that's the thing I was pushing for the most. The audience isn't going to change. The content creators themselves are in an impossible to break feedback loop, probably. The people that should be held the most responsible are probably the friends around them, the colleagues that directly stand to profit so much from basically knowingly taking advantage of these people.
Yeah.
The audience is a big thing. I was going to suggest maybe you could try to pressure Aiden or someone like that through the audience to stop streaming with Fousey or get him in help or something, because that would be nice. But then he just gets more attention. And realistically, Aiden Ross's audience is not there to help people with mental health. They're just there to see the trash fire that is that guy's life. So it's tough. It's a tough situation. But I don't think there's any clear solution. And I definitely don't think that we should pressure YouTube to do something about it. That seems like nightmare scenario.
I think it's really hard to draw the distinct lines on this. I mean, look at a situation like Katie, right? This is someone who clearly, I'm not going to try to diagnose her, but something's going on with Katie, right?
Wait,
who's Katie?
That Katie?
Yeah.
The girl who shaved her head?
Yeah, shaved her head on stream, right?
True.
So, I mean, let's be honest.
I do think the shaved head was different, in fairness. I've heard that it was
I'm saying overall, there's something going on with Katie,
absolutely.
Right? I'm not able to diagnose it. I'm not going to, but something's happening. So when Chud goes and makes a video dunking on Katie, I think her issues do not rise to a point, in my view, where we need to like protect her from herself, right? In fact, I think it's good because her behavior is so obnoxious. I think it's good for society to go, you know what, this is some really horrible behavior you're showing, and we're going to laugh at you for it. I think there's value in that.
Xena, you were trying to get in? And I have a question for you, Xena. Is there any point where it would have been helpful for you during your manic episodes for someone to cut your mic? You know, like what kind of behavior can you exhibit, or what state can you be in where you would want someone to come in and just take your phone away, basically?
Okay, that's a perfect question. I have not. I wasn't streaming or doing content during those times anyway, so like it's no one has people probably assume they've seen me manic. No one, I promise, no one has seen my manic episodes quite yet. But it is the season and it probably will come about after my birthday. Um I will probably have a manic episode, and I give Destiny, Erudite, and everybody full permission to monetize off my manic episodes. Absolutely. It's quite the show. I'm not gonna
This is the
lie.
problem with the streamers. You see,
It's
you
quite
ask
the
one of the
show.
manic streamers, the streamers also stand to profit because it's like if they're manic in isolation, then they just fucking go to the psych ward and then just like take some drugs or something
Oh,
and then go
except that
home.
I don't want to be Baker.
And if
acting
you're
like-
Xena the Witch, then you get fucking famous from it and make a couple $1,000s. So,
well,
you know,
it's-
maybe YouTube actually helps people with mental health. Maybe Fousey's doing the
I
right thing.
don't-
He's getting rich.
Do you think?
I
that
mean, when
they're
you watch
being
back,
helped?
like if you see like stuff of like from the time and you watch it back, like it does kind of help a little bit. Like I have videos in my phone, like people have took of me, like just or even messages and stuff like that, or audios. Like if you watch it back, like holy shit, goddamn, what the fuck was
Yeah.
going on with me? It kind of it gives you that. I
And
don't
I
want
think
to say
chat always has a
clarity,
lot of good
but-
advice too, so you can just listen to them
Wait,
and see what
Tom,
they say.
Tom, do you think that Kick and YouTube are helping Fousey right now? That they've improved his life by allowing him to do all this?
Undoubtedly, he's
Yeah?
in a much better place. He's gonna buy a Ferrari at the end of this year, dude. His life is sick. He said he was broke before all this. Now he goes in. He went on H3 podcast. He was like, "I spent all my 7 mil. Now he's getting famous. He's getting rich again. Okay, he's gonna have a G-wagon, dope house. He's fucking bitches. His life is good. So let's just let him do his thing, okay?"
Yeah, I think if I'm not harming anybody, or if I'm not physically bringing like life-threatening harm to someone, if I'm punching someone, that's different. But like life-threatening harm, then yeah, I would want like somebody I'm close with to be like, okay, you need a break and handle that. Like just hold me down. But Baker acting me, I come out with a worse rage than ever. Like I got Baker acted and I came out worse because now it's vengeance. Now it's, oh, you put me in a hospital, I'll show you crazy.
I just want to say real quick, it's hard to do like a counterfactual, like to figure out like what would have been. It's easy, especially if you've been Baker acted before, to come out of those feeling like you have no trust of the psychiatric institution, that you feel like you were betrayed by your friends, etc. That is absolutely true, and I know I can empathize with feeling like things would have been better if not, but you totally could have been way worse off had you not been institutionalized. That is
Yep.
possible,
Yeah.
right?
I know that.
Sure, okay,
Yeah.
just in case
I know
other
that.
people out there
I would have been dead. Yeah, I mean, I technically would have been dead.
Mm.
But when you're manic, you're not thinking about the reality of the situation. You're thinking about you in that moment and whatever. And in my mind, it was, if I wanted to fucking die, then I can fucking die. It's my life. I can do what I want with it. So when I got out, it wasn't, oh, this person was helping me. They were actually saving me because they love me, da da da. No, I was just angry. Like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Later, as like
Well,
now I
that's
can look
kind of
back
to
and be
the
like,
point.
I get it.
As you say, when you're manic, you aren't thinking about the reality of the situation. You aren't thinking
Yeah.
about, like, you are in a state where you aren't, I don't know, I'd argue, are you really even capable of making like actual decisions in that state, right? Like, I don't know. I've never been
Mm-mm.
manic. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Nope.
What do you think should be
I-
done? What do you
I
think should
have.
be like perfect world solution?
I don't, look, in a perfect world, people would just stop watching. Like, I think that the
Okay, good dream.
people just need to turn that shit off, right? They feed into
But even
it.
you
I
aren't
think
going to
that-
turn it off. We're
yeah,
talking about it right
that's
now.
that's part of what I wanted to discuss today. Even talking
Yeah.
about it, even discussing it is kind of even feeding into this monster that we've created, right? And that we celebrate in a weird way. And again, in a perfect ideal world, people would just be like, "No, this isn't right. We should just turn this off." And I understand that there's this kind of diffusion of responsibility when so many people are participating in this act that's doing harm, that you don't feel any kind of responsibility. Like if you're one of 10 people who end up trampling a guy and getting him killed, you probably feel a lot of guilt. But if you're in a mob of like 100,000 that tramples a guy and gets someone killed, you probably don't feel anything at all. Like the diffusion of responsibility is
But
created.
then,
Yeah.
but then, wouldn't you say like doing that, for example, like shutting people off and cutting, like that becomes like alienating at that point, and then demonizing the whole idea of being manic. You're not nobody's manic 24/7. You're not going to be manic for your entire existence. That doesn't happen. So of course you'll have your manic episodes. People could be aware. People could see. And then obviously, if it's going too far, yes, you should have close family, friends, or even your team, whoever. If you're an artist or a streamer or whatever, your team should step in and like get like, hey, this needs to stop, whatever,
But
make you
why
take your
would
little
they?
break.
Why would they?
But what?
They're getting
Wait,
paid by you. You're making the more money you
right,
make, the
right.
more
But let
money
me
they make.
finish.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, okay, a stream here and there or whatever content here and there, you're still gonna monetize off it. But just prolonging it, yes, you can bring a stop to it. But just stopping it altogether, alienating people when they're manic, is just gonna make them feel worse about even having that issue that they become manic. I think like you're gonna feel alienated. Like that's an issue already.
I know
Oh.
how
I don't know if I'm articulating
conservative-
myself
I
well.
know how conservative this sounds of me, so please apologize. But at some point of my life, it seems like I remember when it was not talked about that you had depression. I remember when that was something you just could not talk about, or being manic or bipolar. I'm old enough to remember when that was whispered about, and you truly got like shamed about it. And I think it has been good breaking the stigma so people can talk about these things more openly. There is definitely a trend I see, especially in the progressive movement at times, of celebrating mental illness. And maybe this is just reading too much of my own personal experience into it, but I think back to my lowest point, which is when I went to rehab 20 years ago. And I had depression at the time. I was going through manic episodes because I'm on 10 different kinds of drugs that I'm taking. And the only reason I was able to get well was taking a hell of a lot of responsibility about my life, taking my mental health seriously, and making different choices. Like to this day, 20 years later, I get up every single morning, I go for a run, a really intense workout, because that's what I have to do to be my best. And I think there is a sense in the way we sometimes talk about this that makes the person sound like they have no agency in this situation. And I don't think it's benefiting the person themselves, and I don't think it's benefiting society.
Yeah. I think there's like the worst thing that we've done to a lot of mentally ill people is like infantilize them to an extent where it's like any and all behavior that they do in the midst, and like because that they can blame on their mental illness, we just like kind of yes man that, we kind of like allow that to be okay, when like if you actually like work or have mental illness, you know that there's a number of elements that like, even if you think about like anxiety, right? Like there's a number of things that are directly an effect of anxiety. You're probably going to be worrying about things more, you're more irritable and agitated and stuff like that. But the anxious person is still responsible for like apologizing if they're irritable and like take it out on somebody. They're still responsible for like figuring out their self-care so that they're less anxious around people if like their anxiety makes them like mean to people. And I think like when we're getting to more like severe mental health conditions, there's more like latitude and grace that I'm willing to give those individuals. But I still think at the end of the day, there's a number of things with all mental health conditions where there's a lot of understandable behaviors, but that doesn't make it excusable. And so, like, if you know that you have a serious mental health condition and you're not taking your self care seriously, and you're not making sure that you're like working with your doctors and stuff and like trying to find solutions to like balance out your mood and stuff, at the end of the day, there is a level of responsibility for you as an individual, which is why, like, even though I think the people exploiting Fousey are actually more awful, because I don't want a society where we're okay with people exploiting Fousey, I don't have high levels of like empathy for Kanye West or Fousey, because there's an element of lack of self-responsibility that they have also been having with their mental health condition.
I think Kanye West is okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with Kanye West, but
You don't think?
I think
what
also
do
a part
wanna
of the
what I wanted to say, like about
briefly,
like
then we'll go to Tom.
the difference with like when you're having a manic episode and why sometimes like close family and friends, sometimes that's not the option, and strangers is like obviously if you have close families and friends, they know about your problem, right? So when you're talking to them, most of the time they're like, "Oh, this is a response that I know is, oh, are you manic right now?" Or even being questioned about it can be a triggering point that sends you even further off. Versus if you're online just talking to strangers that you're cool with, they don't know what you're going through. They just think you're just funny, this, that, and third. So you don't feel abnormal. You don't feel out of place. You don't feel questioned about your mental, and it's more comfortable sometimes. So I don't know. Sometimes I think that's probably why that attention from strangers can be better in that moment than going to your friends who's going to be like, "Oh, you're having a manic problem, you need help," or pacifying you. And that, I know for me, that's a triggering point. I don't like to hear, "Oh, are you manic? Oh, are you on your low? Are you high? Are you on your high right now? Where are you at?" Like, I don't want to hear that shit. Like, just hear me.
We've probably also all dealt with at least one person in our lives who, no matter how much you try to help them, it's just kind of fucked. So I think sometimes it's, even for the friends, I don't necessarily blame them. Like for Fousey's Tube's friends, who would want to be around that guy? He's like a fucking life suck. He's like a black hole person. So if I was his friend, I personally would stop answering that guy's DMs when he asked me to come over and stream,
Yeah, but you can blame like Zerka, who's encouraging him to stop taking his meds.
Well,
Or like
Zerka is
Aiden
just
Ross
like
is
fucking...
actively encouraging it. I
they're
get it.
they're
Aiden Ross
literally
might be-
interacting with him, and they're not only not cutting him off, they're like, "Oh, you're crazy, come over, let's do content."
Yeah, but
even when he starts
Zerka-
punching people on stream in the street, they don't give a shit. So that is, obviously another thing.
I don't
Everyone
think
seems
Zerka
just
was
real quick.
exploiting him and like, "Oh, stop doing your content to become more crazy." I genuinely think, well, Zerka genuinely isn't really like opting for like that type of medicated stuff anyway. Like I've had
Zerka has no fucking ideals. Zerka's just lying for fucking money. He doesn't
No,
believe
I
shit.
actually know him, and even when I talked about the medications I was on before, one of the we have private conversations, not on stream, so it's not comment or content or whatever. And he's like, "You take that shit?
You don't think he could have lied to you?
Up even more?" No, this is somebody that I'm close with. So anyway,
What,
You're
to be
close
clear-
with John
I don't
Zerka?
think-
Wait. Just to be
I
clear,
don't think-
Zerka is a fucking loser. He's fucking insane. And whenever he talks about not taking medication, it's because he's a lazy, selfish fucking loser, and he'd rather
Doesn't
do
he not take
recreational
medication,
drugs.
but he does do coke?
Yeah, he'd rather
I'm
take
saying, yeah,
recreational drugs than actually medicated. So just to be
I
clear,
don't
I
trust
just
this
don't
person's
think.
opinion.
I just don't think that what he's saying is stop taking drugs, become more crazy. That's all I'm saying here. I think he just genuinely in his
I think
mind.
he just says
thinks
whatever's
doctors
most
not
convenient at the
taking
given
drugs.
moment to
Yep.
get famous.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Zerka is like literally just like kind of a bottom of the barrel type individual where it's like as long as it's degenerated enough and gets some views, he's just going to be willing to do it. And like he's like pumping himself full of
If
cocaine,
he
even though I
thought
think he's
that
got an admitted
legally-
addiction issue. So I don't know. Yeah.
If Zerka thought legally he could get away with executing FouseyTube in the street with a gun, he would do it for content.
Yeah.
I know he would. He would. He doesn't give a
People
fuck.
would watch. So what I'm hearing is
I would watch. I'd
Okay.
retweet it.
Of course.
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is that y'all
I'd
seem to
watch
think-
it. I just want to do it.
Yeah, y'all seem to think it's okay to derive entertainment from the mentally ill, so long as no one is getting hurt. So if you all think that's true, I'm gonna need you to give me the top 3 entertaining mental illnesses. Destiny, go. What do you got? Top 3 entertaining.
I think it depends on how it manifests in people. I think is like different people might have like
Okay,
OCD,
top 3
and in
mentally
some
ill
ways it-
people who are funny to watch.
Man, I'm not gonna fucking do this. You're not getting me on this one. Fuck
no,
you.
I gotta.
Yeah, I was gonna say no shot of my answer. to
Jesus
this question.
Christ.
Okay,
Can I say
but
one
this,
quick?
this
Can I say one quick
Please,
semi-serious thing before we meme hard? Somebody mentioned earlier about like dealing with friends with mental illness that is really difficult. If you're a normal, mentally well-adjusted person, you can't really help a friend with mental illness because most of the thought processes that you have that you would use to personally get better don't really work with people with mental illness. If you really want to help a mentally ill person, the number one thing that you could do is ask them if they're comfortable with it to either join a therapy session or get some like actual paperwork from their therapist and say like, hey, when I'm having XYZ problem, it would help if you did ABC things. If you really want to help somebody that has a mental illness, rather than just like saying like, get out of bed and don't be depressed and blah, 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 I think that's probably the route to go. And then that'll give you like a clear direction for ways that you can help people without feeling like you're lost and hopeless and not actually like making an impact or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
you're
Now I
all very okay with like deriving entertainment from mentally ill people, but as soon as I try to get at some entertainment for mentally ill people, you're all like, well, that feels weird to do.
I would
don't
say
know if
shout
that's
out,
okay. I don't know if that's
shout
okay
out
to
Chris
do.
Chan.
We said list your top 3 disorders, which is like
It's a little
the
bit
most
different.
dehumanizing
That's
and like
crazy.
awful thing to say because disorders manifest so different. Like I'm not just gonna be like,
Well-
oh, I love NPD. That's a fun.
Well,
like
it's not
what?
like-
I'm not gonna
I
answer
think
that.
Extorting
is
somebody who's
autism a mental
schizophrenic.
illness? I would say that's pretty high. Shout out Chris Chan. Shout out
Neuro-
Daniel Larson.
Developmental disorder.
Shout out
Elliot Rogers. So.
Shout out Elliot Roger. Yep, also autism. It's Roger, by the way, you fuck. Okay, listen,
What did
get
I
your
say?
incel lore right. You're trying to be
Get his
base in
name
here.
out of
You're
your
trying to be
mouth.
racist. You can't even get his fucking name right. You fucking fake fan.
Oh
Okay,
my
shout
God.
out Elliot. Shout out who's the guy that thought he was Danny Phantom? Randy Stair. Shout out Randy Stair. 𝕬𝖎𝖎. Some of my favorites of all time. Just want to put that out there. Yeah, definitely autism ranks pretty high for girls. I'd say usually like BPD. Anorexia is pretty high on that list.
Yeah. Yeah, Wick, I disagree
Yeah.
with your premise. I actually don't believe in rewarding the mentally ill on stream, and that's why I click off Destiny's stream every time Quiznos is on. I just
Shout
click.
out.
I
Wow.
click to go somewhere else.
Throwing
Unbelievable.
shots.
Look, Narcissism PD is one of the ones that it's okay to enjoy watching.
Oh,
right?
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for permission, Erudite. I guess why like we've all mentioned that this is something that's happened throughout the years, right? It's the spectacle of the thing. Why do people like this so much, right? In your opinion, why do people like to watch the train wreck? To watch the dumpster fire? What about us makes us so drawn to other people's breakdown?
It's the same reason that men love watching war documentaries and women listen to true crime, where like women are getting like raped and murdered. I don't know. There's something that orients humans to be extremely interested in the macabre.
Yeah.
There's probably some element of like, whoa, that's crazy, but there's also this personalizing of like, oh my god, I hope this never happens to me. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think like it's innate in most people.
There's a
Most
lot of
people
different
just, like,
reasons.
I
I
think
noticed
it's
from
human
comment sections
curiosity.
on video essays about it, some of it's like almost like catharsis. People are like, oh, this couldn't be me, or oh, no matter how bad my life is, I can never be this fucking guy. So some level of it is that. Some level of it is just really liking a trash fire. Some people just really enjoy it because if a story is just all happy, I mean, that's cool, but like it's a lot actually easier, I'd say, to tell a story that's, often negative. And I've experienced that, it's the videos I have with the most views are like the most depraved fuckers on the planet.
yeah, it's like how like
yeah.
the last 5 minutes of true crime shows are almost never watched because it's like the happy part where like, and then they found the guy or they like reunited a family member. It's like boring. I just want to hear about how he's like stabbing her to death and all the investigation.
Right.
I don't
And
know.
if you're
I think
a
there's a
YouTuber,
difference.
I think it's also like if you're watching YouTube and you're seeing like the rise and fall of, Destiny's career, for example, because he's falling off right now. If you're watching something like that, it's much more compelling to see someone who has built something so big and then watch it all crumble down than just hear a boring story about like, oh, he kept getting bigger and succeeded. Like, I guess that's kind of cool. But I think, people are just super drawn to like watching someone fumble the bag. And it's like, oh, if I was in that position, I would never fumble it that hard,
Well, that
comments like
doesn't
that are
make
stuff I
any
see a lot.
sense considering if people are also attracted to the toxicity in general. Like, I mean, we have Blueface and Krishan Rock, and they're not falling off. Instead, they've gotten more and more successful, and people continue to watch the climb. There's not really a fall off as they're making a lot of money and continuing with success.
How does
And
what I
then
say
on
not
top
make
of,
sense though?
if I can finish, like you're talking about
Okay.
fall off, assuming that just because someone has a mental disorder or bipolar, which is generally what we're talking about, means that they'll fall off. Like that's what I'm saying doesn't make sense. A lot of the times, obviously, these streamers continuously get popular. But another thing I wanted to say is there's a difference between having bipolar type of crazy or BPD type of crazy and schizophrenia. Now, exploiting someone with schizophrenia, most people with schizophrenia, if you're having those episodes, like a lot of like you're crazy. You don't even, if you think you're a fairy, you think you're a fairy. So it's not okay to exploit that because you can't actually make rational decisions and know who you are and what's going on. And I think that's kind of fucked up. Versus if I'm having a manic episode, I know that I'm alive. I know that I'm me. I know that I'm just a crazy bitch, but I know that I live here in this reality. It's, my brain's not completely fried in the sense of like somebody that's going through an episode of schizophrenia.
I feel like I
I don't
kind of
think we've
agree with
really
what
seen
you're
that.
saying, but I think that there's more crossover between like mania. Like I think mania can induce like psychosis. I'm pretty sure, right? Like I think one of the symptoms of mania is experiencing like you are actually, not to be mean to you, but like you're actually experiencing like delusions that don't map onto reality and are persistent regardless of external feedback. Like similar to a person with schizophrenia might experience certain delusions or paranoia.
Yeah, but I think somebody, if they're suffering like schizophrenia, I don't think like that's what I'm saying. I don't think they should be like necessarily on platforms like losing their mind, freaking out, thinking that aliens are coming down to destroy them and
But
like
we have a line. Thank God. Schizophrenia
Yeah.
is your line. Out.
Yeah.
I'm
yes.
great. Does anyone?
This is the issue, though, Wick. To come back to your original question,
Yeah, it's
which is
not black and white
why,
like this.
are we attracted to this? I have a really good friend of mine, 𝕎𝙬𝙚𝙚. She's a clinical therapist, and she helped me understand this. Humans are attracted to the minimum and the maximum of any situation. At the beginning of the show, we mentioned Jerry Springer. Back in the day, Jerry Springer sold a ton of VHS tapes back when it was shocking for a woman to come out topless on a television show and for that to be censored over, right? And then they would sell the uncensored version and horny dudes would buy it, right? That was shocking back in the day. Obviously, like in the internet age, that's not shocking at all, like a topless woman, right? So you've got to go more and more and more and more. And part of why, part of the dance I feel like content creators are trapped between is there's such an incentive in the algorithm to go to the maximalist, craziest position on anything, right? That's what's going to reward the algorithm. And then eventually the algorithm steps in and smacks him down, kicks him off, right? So it's a cycle where this is why it's so unfair to YouTubers, right? At a certain point, I think that it's just inevitable that people are going to go to the maximum of all this stuff.
I mean, the algorithm at the end of the day is not like it's not like YouTube themselves pick and choose what gets popular. The
Right.
algorithm serves you what you're interested in. It's like personalized ads. And so in that way, if people are interested in, I don't know, schizophrenic people having mental breakdowns, then they're going to watch that. And they clearly are right now. So
But doesn't
I don't know. In that way, it's just like what
when we say the algorithm, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to blame like robots and everything, but the reality is that, and the irony is exactly the opposite. The algorithm is just society.
It's human
Right,
nature.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think my issue with like being like, so where's the line is like, there isn't a clear line. Like there's some things that you can look at and go, well, that's obviously exploitative. And I think the people making that content are bad individuals, right? So like if you're secondary, you're like, I think Turkey Tom, you do a lot of like drama coverage, but say you're doing the drama coverage of somebody, you're intentionally trying to inflame that person with your coverage, you actively lie about them, and you're trying to build a weird narrative that isn't necessarily going on. Okay, well now I think you're doing something bad, right? Where you're trying to instigate this person, you're trying to milk more drama out of it by being an asshole to this individual. Okay, I think we would all agree that that's wrong. Or if I'm like the first, if I have Fousey on my platform and say I've recently learned that he has a paranoia about how like technology is listening to him, and then while I'm talking to him, I keep like playing sounds on my soundboard that sound like whispering so that he thinks that like the government's listening into him. That would be fucking awful, right? Or the guy who called into Fousey or whatever, his girlfriend, and like did that shit. That's really bad. But it's like, is it bad to have a bipolar person, even if they're manic on stream?
No.
Not necessarily inherently. It really depends on what the content is. Because if you have a stream about somebody who's actively manic and you have somebody like beforehand giving consent to be on stream with them, and you're walking through how to like actually talk to manic people in the midst of it, well, then we might be okay with that type of content. I don't know. It's just so
and
much.
I think
more
drawing a line is difficult because like no two of these situations are going to be exactly the same. Like even comparing Etika to FouseyTube is like not the same thing. Comparing Recful to that is not the same thing. These are all case by case basis where there's individual responsibility from the people involved, and I just think that placing a broader responsibility on the internet is not only like kind of unrealistic, it's also just kind of dumb. But even if it wasn't dumb, like it'll never happen. You'll never get anything out of that. The conversation can just end at like, well, nobody's ever going to do anything, so people in his life need to help him.
No one's ever going to do anything. Well, we can't do anything about it, so we should do nothing at all. I reject that notion. I think that we can do things about it. I'm not sure what. I'm not an expert on this.
𝙬𝙚𝙚.
What do you want to do, Wick? What do you propose?
Good question. Good question. I don't know. One of the reasons I brought you all together here is to talk about it and find out what we're going to do and if there's anything we can do, right? Maybe there's...
Look, if you want, next time Fousey's live, I'll pay for you to fly out and you can put him in a chokehold, take him into deep water, and then you can take him to a safe place where you can stream with him and he'll be fine with you, okay?
I kind of like how 𝙬𝙚𝙚 broke that down because, for example, if you're having like a documentary or you're doing, like I said, awareness of mental health and you're just talking to somebody and they've given you consent, whatever, and it's just regular content. But then if you're playing around with someone, like she said, like, or they're schizophrenic or whatever, and you start being like, oh my God, you're right, there's aliens, they're coming to get us, and you start putting them in a freak out mode for the sake of you having content, now that's just fucking evil and disgusting as fuck. That's disgusting.
But that doesn't simply having this environment, right, where we have encouraged, like even subtly, people to go to more and more and more and more extreme lengths. Like people are watching Fousey, right?
But
And they're
poking
saying,
at his nobody was really telling Fousey like things that were trigger points. They weren't actively trying to pick at things that he has that
I
were triggers for
understand,
him.
but
Is
what
what
I'm
I'm
saying
saying.
here in this instance is people are watching this and saying, hey, if I imitate this behavior, if I do the same things, I too can have a shot at the big leagues, right? I too can be
Mhm.
get a kick contract for an unknown amount of money, right? But any contracts.
I
Pretty
mean,
good,
Wick, I'm
right?
going down through this. Like, let's think about this from a policy perspective, right? So I agree with you that this stuff is exploitive. And just to be really clear, there's a point where I tune out. I actually avoid unhealthy people in my personal life. I don't watch a lot of these streams, right? I personally make a choice that's different with you. It sounds like what you're advocating is there needs to be some grand scale here. I think we would all agree it's not the government's role. That's a free speech issue. I think we all agree. Kyla gave some great examples of why you cannot delineate this finely. We do not want YouTube in the position of like deciding who is and is not like having mental health issues. That doesn't work. We agree that as human nature, the audience is never going to make a different decision. People are always going to be attracted to things that are sensationalistic and crazy. So I'm not trying to be snarky. I don't know what you're asking for.
So one of the problems I have with what 𝙎𝙬𝙗𝙧𝙚 said, right, is that it seems like this kind of the thing we do when we don't really want to tackle an issue, so we make it as complex as possible. Zenon's parable, where
But it is
before you
extremely
cross the room,
complex.
you have to cross half the room, and but before we do that, we have to cross that half, right? But before we do that, we have to do this, and so you break it down and kind of create this situation where it sounds like this insurmountable obstacle, and absolutely there are dangers to any kind of implementation of anything we put in, right? But we can all recognize that what's going on now. Well, I guess I'll ask you, do you think like we recognize this has happened before, but at least in my lifetime, and I'm 40 fucking years old here, so I'm not the oldest here, but I'm pretty old. I remember the Jerry Springer times, but now it's everywhere. It's accelerated. We have more of it than we had back in that day. It's just more common, more accepted.
Is that true?
You don't
I don't think
I feel
that's
like we
true.
probably
Back
have
in
the
the day,
exact same
Jerry's
amount. We just have more content.
Yeah,
yeah,
keep in mind that
Jerry
like,
Springer's just the only place to watch it. The one
yeah,
place.
and keep in mind, I think for daytime TV, Jerry Springer-esque content was essentially the most popular stuff. And when I say Jerry Springer-esque
Jerry
content,
Springer,
I'm gonna
Dr.
say,
Phil.
yep, and even more so than that, I would say, arguably, all the court TV stuff was kind of the same as well.
Ori.
When you're watching like Judge Judy and stuff, you're not like, wow, I'm really curious like what legal input she's gonna have to this incredibly sophisticated case when they child support. You want to see some people say some retarded, stupid shit that are fucking their lives up. Like
Yes.
and that was the case with all those like court TV, Judge Mathis, Judge, like all these people you wanted to see that. So, I mean, like, has it gotten more popular?
The difference is
I mean,
in
there's
the
more of it, but like
ability-
this has like always been
Sure.
like the most popular types of TV.
Well, the difference
I
is the
think.
ease of participation. So back in the day, I couldn't go on Jerry Springer. I couldn't go on any of these. I couldn't interact with these people.
If you
right?
wanted, I
But
think you could just go
today-
to the set and get on, right? It's not that hard. Like, 'cause they have an
Yeah.
audience.
It was
Yeah, I
pretty
mean, you
easy
had to
to
be,
pick
like-
up live audience for
You had to be in
Jerry
like
Springer.
the right city, sure. Like a random person from Kentucky probably wouldn't. Now,
But
it's
if
a
you
little
really
bit more
wanted to go, you
custom,
could go. You
Probably,
could.
yeah.
And also, Wick, I don't know what you used a term for it. I can't remember what it was. It sounded retarded to me. It is like literally the most complex issue of our time is like social
Yeah.
media censorship and how to interact with it.
And
It is
mental
like
health. And mental health.
yeah, and how
We have
those
not
interact like
solved
that
that.
is
well, we can't solve
perhaps
it, so
the
might as well
most
just
complex.
Let them fuck each other, right? Like, just let them go,
Well, the
right?
issue-
Let's let them
the issue
run
is-
around.
That's
do
not the
thing.
response though. That's
But
such
the-
a cop out.
yeah.
Like
The response
let's
isn't
say-
also let's make awful policy that is going to be extremely harmful, particularly to anyone with mental
But
health
your
conditions.
point is that
and, like,
any policy would
disproportionately
be
punish them.
awful policy, and I reject that notion. I think
The
that
policies that I'm
policy
thinking
can
of-
be good, right? We
Which
all
policy?
recognize that there
do
can
you
be bad
seriously
policy, but
trust
there
the
can be
fucking
good
fairies
policy.
that run YouTube to do the right
The
thing?
fairies
I
that
personally
run
do not.
YouTube.
Okay.
And
I
on
think
top
if
I
we
do not
that-
trust
incentivize
them.
them to, we can.
But on
Dude,
top
who
of
knows
that,
what they're gonna do? They're
You
gonna
can't-
do crazy shit, or do you really want the right wing to be in touch, where they just fucking ban everyone who they don't like because they're mentally ill? I
Well,
don't. I
say
don't want
mass
that.
report as being mentally ill, they'll just report
Or-
every trans content creator ever.
Well,
for all
no,
of eternity.
that's one. Okay, I'm going to comment on two things. One, let's just go with the red pill thing. They wouldn't because they don't believe in mental mental illness. Depression is not real on red pill, so they wouldn't.
They
have
would
to
still
put it in
use the
mental
mass
health.
flagging.
But
Are you
wait,
mean there's
yeah.
let me go back
snowflakes
to
the
what I was
moment they
saying.
hate you?
Yeah, but they
How
do that
can you-
anyway. That's no
Wait,
different
so
than just
how
today.
can you?
None.
How
There's no
could you
difference.
censor? How could anybody censor whether or not someone's having a manic episode? Because honestly, like it's not scheduled.
We
You
can
don't know
all
when someone's
tell.
having a manic
We can
episode.
all tell pretty
That's
much
what I'm saying. You can't tell
can all
because there's
tell
been people who have thought
when
I've
someone's
had my
going
manic
through it. We
episodes and
don't.
I haven't yet.
We may not know what it is they are going through, but we can all I can recognize when someone's drunk on my stream. Right?
Sure.
I can
Yeah, but sometimes
recognize
people
when
are just
someone's going through it. Not to a
Sometimes,
perfect
But
degree.
just going through it doesn't mean a manic. There's a difference between going
Sure.
through it and just acting schizo and actually being manic, though.
Look, are you a mental
can't
health
tell.
professional? Do you
Like
know?
you
I
can't
don't
tell.
need
No, but
to
I
be
am
able to
somebody who has
recognize
bipolar
shit.
disorder, so I think I know when the fuck I'm manic and when the
asked
fuck
Wick.
I'm acting.
Sorry.
Yeah, but I'm
Oh, my
answering you.
bad.
Like, just because
Yeah,
I'm
no
not a
worries.
mental health
I'm
professional
sorry.
doesn't mean I can't
okay.
recognize when someone's doing
I think Xena is
self-harm.
manic right now. We need to go to the
Yeah, I
fuck.
think so,
Through,
too.
get this
Like,
bitch off the air.
Pick
Holy
off.
shit.
Rick, where I think I reached a different conclusion than you do. This is why I think this is less of an issue than you do. So take the Fousey thing, right? So there's a clip of him going around. Two of the most viral clips are one, him having sex with a drunk woman, which I
banned,
consider
yeah.
to be rape, and then another one of him calling the cops and basically lying and saying a gun was to his head and calling in a threat, and the cops are pulled out. Both of these situations are things when law enforcement is going to get involved, and we actually have a society here. I think that when there's so much mental health issues, there's going to be a point where they run out of money or they run into situations with the authorities. And I think like what we need to be doing is advocating broader mental health policy as a country here to step in, because these people are going to end up interacting with law enforcement. That to me makes more sense than let's get YouTube to censor potentially
that note-
mentally ill people.
On that note, a question to you. Would you be okay with bringing back institutionalization for the mentally ill?
I need to study more about it. I don't have strong feelings.
It's complicated, but if it's done in a way that's like empirically sound and solid, sure.
Yeah.
It could never be. It
Institution
could
in the
never
way
be.
that we did it in the 60s? No.
Yeah.
Right? If we're like strapping them down
No
to beds and stuff.
institution is good enough. No,
Yeah.
no.
When I went to
I
rehab,
just disagree with that.
Relating to institutionalizing people is it would probably be a good thing that eliminating the institutionalization of mentally unwell people is basically just meant that now they're just basically stuck out in the
They're
streets.
homeless and on the street.
Lives are like,
Well,
Yeah.
they go to prison, right? Which
Oh.
Wu's comment
Well, they go
reminded
to
me.
prison, they go to rehab, and then they go to psych wards, and
That's
then
right.
they go to the homeless.
Well,
Prison's not so bad.
I did.
Road-
I've
can
already.
wait
That's the
lift.
rotating doors.
Okay, prison. I already did. I did federal prison. I'm sorry. If that was
Jesus.
the option, I'm gonna be mentally ill on the street.
Dude, in prison you get food, you can weight lift, they give you like books and stuff. Like
You
you just get
understand that
base in
the
prison.
food in prison is so poison. Like I literally had warts all over and I grew up without acne. Like I had warts. I still have the photos. I had so many warts and blisters. And
Well, you
it
can
was
just
so
focus
bad.
on your
There's,
physique.
I had a
I don't
blood
think,
disease. It was
just to be clear, I
disgusting.
don't think anyone here is advocating that we put mentally ill people in jail.
Except
just to be
me.
clear.
I think
Except
they
for
all need to be
Destiny
put in
and
there.
Tom.
No, I'm kidding. I'm
But
kidding. I'm
well,
trolling.
either way, I think it. Well, I don't know. From what I've seen by being Baker acted, I got out because I'm really good at lying to these fucking psychiatrists. Thank God. But
you gotta
I
go
was
back.
not.
Send her
I was
back.
not staying there, and I'm sorry, it was worse than prison. Is what I was about to get to saying. Like federal prison, I would rather do that than be back at that. Like it was, bro. They literally, when they run out of room, they make me sleep on a chair with a.
I understand what you're saying, and I know this sounds really mean, but it's the mental institutions aren't for you; they're for us.
Yeah, well,
That's kind of the point. Is
I
that,
have
like,
been told
yeah.
that I feel like it should only be in the most extreme cases you put people there, because everyone I've talked to that has been like, let's say, suicidal, that's gone to a mental institution, has said that they were worse after. Like it didn't.
Yeah.
benefit them.
The issue is if we want to get complex about this, there's lots of rehab centers that you can be forced to go into that are fantastic, right? The issue
Yep.
is like when we're talking about institutions, what we need to be talking about is like standards that are implemented in institutions to make sure
Yes.
that they're like livable and functional,
Yeah.
and probably having separate institutions for individuals who like have like both antisocial and like a manic disorder. So they're like people who are assaulting both staff and like other regulars versus people who are just like schizophrenic or suicidal, and like separating these populations out a little bit better. Like there are ways to institutionalize people that isn't barbaric and horrific. Like I don't think anyone here is
Yeah.
advocating for that necessarily, except for
Except
Destiny.
Can I mirror off of that, Kyla? So for me, getting institutionalized was the best thing that ever happened to me. I remember when I got into rehab, I had a crippling anxiety disorder. I was a full-blown alcoholic. I was addicted to drugs. I was depressed. I'm having manic episodes. I was a hot goddamn mess. And my parents sat down and they forcibly institutionalized me, and I ended up going to live at the hospital rehab for 3 months. It's the same place that Tiger Woods went to for his sex addiction, and it changed my life. It is the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me responsibility for my choices. It made me see myself more honestly. It made me take my mental health far more seriously, and it gave me the tools literally for 20 years of sobriety. So I think the difference is I went to the like $20,000 a month like version of rehab, right? And it was an excellent experience for me. So the answer is to get more people that standard of that level of care.
You know, speaking of exploiting off of people who are mentally ill, wouldn't there be a line that we'd have to draw for like panel hosts who intentionally bring people together who they know will hate each other and disagree, and then intentionally say things to inflame the drama between those people to try to maximize as much view and content off of these individuals as possible? I don't know. I feel like if
Yeah.
having a mentally ill person around at all is wrong, wouldn't there be something
So
to say about
something-
like panel hosts?
Something that I was going to ask that's kind of in the same vein of that is, let's say that we do have a policy where we don't have mentally ill people on. What about just ordinarily like self-destructive people that aren't mentally ill? Like, do we also, is like no form of self-destruction now?
And where do you draw the line of mental illness? Like if you have
about
depression but
super
you're
assholes?
medicated?
Sure.
Yeah.
True.
This is a
like
fair
Wick.
point. Right?
Wick, were you
Like
were you
Wick.
bring us on to? Were you expecting a debate? Okay. You expecting
Well, I
some
thought
kind
one of you would be sane, but I apparently we have a panel where I thought we were going to.
We're all
on those
YouTubers,
who-
bro. You can't
those
expect.
Who,
I'm
those who
not a
monetize the
YouTuber.
mentally ill.
You got the fucking
those who
shirt
exploit the
SM7B.
mentally
You have the
ill,
Joe
and
Rogan
mentally ill.
podcast swag.
But I only got the mentally ill apparently, so we're gonna work with it. We'll go with it. Apparently it's okay to exploit you all, so I'm going to continue to do so. But that's a good point that Erudite made, right? What levels? There's a difference between someone simply being an asshole and making poor decisions, and then there's a difference between someone who's obviously inebriated, drunk, or otherwise.
Can I just hold on? I'm so sorry.
Messed
Fuck.
up.
I keep hearing random things from me. It is not always obvious who's inebriated. Sometimes people can appear quite drunk and they aren't that drunk. They could be tired and have had one drink. Sometimes people can be very good at hiding how alcoholic they are, and there's other indicators that you need. Like it is, I didn't know this until I've had a little bit of first-hand experience with it, and then I had a lot of pushback on Trevor this once. Like you can be blackout drunk and sometimes not give outward indicators of it. That apparently is a thing. So
I mean,
be
Xena's
careful.
fucked up right now. We haven't said anything about it, even though we all know it could be anyone.
So I'd be careful about that. Like, oh, like it's obvious when somebody's like really drunk. That's not always the case.
Not always
This
the
is
case, but
Sure.
often
Sometimes it is, but yeah.
often it is. And I think that like the point here is that there's a difference between someone who is just making poor decisions and they're totally sober. They have no mental illness going on. They're just making a really bad decision. Being
What
self-destructive.
about awful people? What about bringing on
sure.
like
But
okay?
there's
What
a-
about bringing
again, there's a
on
difference.
actors in a panel who lie about the people they're talking to? They're intentionally as bad faith as possible to try to get sick, epic dunks on people, and often like leave people like feeling like super upset and distressed because they're going against an opponent who's willing to like lie to them. But we're gonna keep bringing them on panel shows because they make really good content. But like maybe we shouldn't.
Am I getting
Wick,
called
how
out here, or
responsible
Wick
is
getting
it
called out here? I don't know
for
who's
you for
in
you
trouble
to
right now.
react? How responsible is it for you to react to pedophile Mr. Girls content with serious
Whoa.
intellectual?
Well, I didn't just react to him. I
Yes,
had him on.
thoughts,
I had
thoughts,
him-
Destiny?
I had him
I
on.
think it's great.
Yeah, what do you think about
You had
having
him
this
on?
girl
Oh,
on
that's
your
even
platform?
better. Okay, dude.
They're best buddies for a while.
When he goes to jail and gets ripped, I know who's gonna beat out when he comes out.
Oh,
and I
fuck.
think it's gonna be you.
Oh
okay?
The world's not
He's
ready
gonna
for
go
it.
into federal prison, come out in like 6 months. He's gonna be jacked as fuck, and I'm gonna personally pay him to beat the shit out of you for bringing me on this panel. Okay?
But the
my
difference here,
plan.
the difference between these two
6 months is
situations that
crazy.
Erudite says about people just being assholes is because there's very few examples that we can point to, none that I'm aware of people just being self-destructive and assholes that leads to people getting assaulted, sexually assaulted, etc. But there's plenty of examples I could cite right now of people who are mentally ill, who people do this thing with, who kill themselves, who like look at Fousey. It's not Fousey. It's not
Fousey.
just that he's
Shut
mentally
up.
ill. It's that he's abused people on stream. He's assaulted people on stream. And you know what the streaming platform did about it? Fuck all, right? They keep paying him money. Like, again, like at what point do we say they have some responsibility? Say, look what's happening on your platform. Maybe you should stop this. right? Maybe you should stop this. I don't know.
But the
I-
people don't
yeah.
want them to stop. So technically, their only responsibility and their only thing is they want what the people want. And if the people are in high demand of this, of course they're going to take it. Like,
It's
Why
also,
wouldn't
it's
they
just
make
like,
their
it's just
money?
impossible. What are you going to do? Is YouTube going to hire a board of psychiatrists to watch people's streams to make appropriate diagnoses and be like, yes, conclusively? Well, they couldn't do that because psychiatrists are sworn by like the Golden Gate rule or whatever, that they're not allowed to diagnose public figures unless they've like personally sat down with them and interviewed them, assessed them. So they could never do that. So then what, do they hire just random fucks to decide whether or not somebody's mentally ill enough? This is
and
why
hear
it's
me
like,
out here.
this is just, they'll never do it.
And
It's
hear me
logistics
out
nightmare.
here. When someone
P7.
goes and gets a drunk woman on stream, finds out that they've been a victim of sex trafficking, then goes to the airport bathroom and fucks them, right? They could be like, okay, maybe it's time to cut this guy off, right? I don't know.
I
Maybe
understand
that's
what we're
weird.
saying, but like I think
That's
that our interpretations of everything
stupid.
can be wildly different. Like even that, I watched that. I'm a big consent king. Okay, I haven't raped hardly anybody in my life, and I think that
Hardly?
that whole interaction, I think that whole interaction was totally fine. Actually, I don't think the lady was drunk at all. I think she was talking about her past. But like, would I say that like that like what lady who's like what 30 years old like can't consent to sexual activity? I don't know if I would. I don't know if she. I don't know if she was ever in a state where I felt she was so inebriated. I think she had like 2 or 3 drinks at the bar. She was like catching a flight, but I mean I could be wrong. Somebody else could be more right. But like that's an example where for some of you guys in here, that's like a very clear cut wrong that I disagree with and I disagree with. So how would we even begin to like police this type of stuff? You know?
Well, what about when he
A lot of the
slapped
times,
people or
like-
assaulted people, right? What about then? Can we
But they were all slapping each
we can
other.
police the illegal behavior. If somebody
We
does
can
something
police
illegal or
crime.
assault somebody, that's
Yep.
bad. Easily,
Yep.
we all agree with that.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Or does
my-
like drugs or like
Yeah,
stuff
sure.
like that. Like stuff that's in TOS, you can ban, which is why I'm saying a lot of TS will capture some elements of mental illness, right? If somebody's super manic and they're like screaming racial slurs all the time and then they start like doing like crack on stream, well, now you can ban them for doing the crack on stream, right? But you
Mhm.
can't really ban them for being manic. That's just like the only thing I could think of as making a policy around mental health is that if you're a streamer who's intentionally trying to trigger other people's mental health, so say you find out somebody's PTSD trigger and you keep like playing it around them and stuff like that, maybe that should be bannable. I'd be probably okay with that, but that's basically no one, so that wouldn't actually address any of the concerns here.
Well,
Yeah.
see, but that's what Destiny does to me on the regular. Is he knows my trigger points and he loves to bring them on so that
Yeah,
he
but
can
you
trigger
like
me.
it too
And then-
much. Look at, you're smiling right now, so it
But
can't
maybe,
count.
but maybe
That's
I'm
right, yeah.
manic.
Well, you
would
just
come
said you
back
aren't,
to-
and I like to believe people.
But with Destiny's high IQ assessment of manic people, I could be in a state of delusion to where I think I'm not manic, and of course, I can't make sane, rational decisions to tell you whether I'm manic or not.
True.
Okay.
That's
That's
true. We
great.
all know
I like
Destiny's
when-
defending this position because he loves exploiting mentally ill people.
Sure, I want to
Really-
hear from Wu real quick. Go ahead.
So I want to come back to something Kyla was saying and really ask you directly, Wick. I see a difference of magnitude, but as far as the outcome for people, I don't see a substantive difference in bringing a bunch of people together on a panel when you know it's going to be a shit show. Look, I've been on those panels. I've talked to you after those panels. I know it's bad for your mental health. It's certainly bad for mine. And like put a bunch of toxic people together for clicks. I have no ethical issue with that. I think it's just a difference of degree. So if you're so concerned about a Fousey situation, I mean, how do you reconcile that with what you, and you do a lot of smart conversations, but you do some drama content too. How do you reconcile that?
Because I think degree matters here, right? We obviously recognize that a glass of water, you won't drown from it. However, if you are in a river trying to drink the river, you're going to drown. Degree actually matters here. And I think that there does come a point, and I'm not sure where that point is. I don't have the exact answer, but there does come a point where, okay, let's cut the mics here. It's just causing too many issues, and it's causing too many, societal issues as well. So even if people want this thing, then I think that people in positions of responsibility have the responsibilities to say, even if you want this thing, even if the audience is begging for it, now this is too much, we don't let them do it. I don't know what that exact line is, to be clear.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah,
that
I've
there
seen you
is.
do that. To your credit, I've seen you do that regularly.
Yeah, there is a point where I'll say, okay, this is enough. It's too much, and I'm gonna.
I think
let
also
you
the
go.
issue is when we talk about non-mentally ill people, we typically give them greater agency and ability to consent or not consent. So like if you're like of a reasonable mental status and we don't consider you mentally ill, if something is too much for you, then we say that you should probably be able to leave. I think that's when I was trying to draw lines of like who I would have on stream or who I wouldn't have on stream. Usually the thing that I would try to figure out for certain people is like at some point there were some people who were like, it's fun to have you on stream and this is blah, blah, blah. But then if I feel like it's starting to get too much for them, I might reach out personally and I might say like, hey, if it's ever too much, like let me know. If you think you shouldn't be here, that's fine, to check with them afterwards. And then for some people, it's just like, listen, like you're too mentally ill, like you shouldn't be on stream at all. Like I don't think you can make the decision.
Without outing who these people are, but can you give us an example of a time you've drawn the line and said, okay, no, you're just too much. I'm just gonna cut you off.
I've had that conversation with almost everybody that I thought has had weird mental. I had that conversation with Xena when she was having her big like Sneeko thing. I messaged her because we were going to chat on stream, and I was like, "Listen, I don't think that you're in a place right now where it's like probably good for you to come on stream and do this. As much fun as it would be to like, yeah, it's like if I try to figure it, but obviously like I mean like some people might say that like the Anna stuff was too much or the Mr. Girl Alive stuff was too much, or like I try to navigate it as best I can. Obviously it's good content for me too, but there are places where I'll cut the line. But I think that that's it's not really nuanced. It's very clear, but the clear part is just hard to see. So like the clear part should be that like if somebody's ability to actually be in a situation and keep track of their own mental health is compromised, they should probably be taken out. That's like I think the pretty crystal clear answer. It's just really hard to see where that exactly is.
When
but
the
I think
bell's
that's the
been
line
hit.
we should be looking for. Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
that, like him when he did, like he reached out for that, for example, like it kind of that does bring a sense of clarity because it's like I think mainly it was his approach to the way he approached it because it wasn't necessarily just about his stream. He was saying like, just so you know, like he even gave me the rundown about how many of my ex's ops would want to put me on stream for that same reason too, and like use me in a sense. And he's like, I just want you to know you'll feel like shit after because they're just gonna use you, and it just brings like a sense of clarity. Like, okay, maybe I'm like a little too going a little too crazy right now. Maybe I need to sit back, take a break. So, and it was honestly the reason I took like 2 weeks off of even being on social media or Twitter or anything was from Destiny reaching out to me. And then I just would just text him privately.
In my opinion, it's good that he did because, well, I'll just ask you directly. How many people did you have reaching out to you at that time, trying to get you on to? You don't have to name names or anything, but like how many? Like, just give us an idea, right?
At least eight different people that actively
pretty big content creators?
major streamers. That one that really hates that man, and it was a really big platform too. And like it was tempting, but at the same time, I was like, damn, I just listened to Destiny, and I was just thinking, thanks, Destiny. You've given me a lot to think about.
I think another thing to take into consideration is the fact that, what is it, at this point, how many people are, like, what's the general percent of the population diagnosed with mental illnesses? Is it like 30% in women or 20%?
If you're including mood disorders, I think it goes up to like 70% have had at least some lifetime experience with mental health.
Well, I guess the reason I bring that up is because, like, to what degree do you chalk someone's bad decisions up to mental illness, or is it just them being, fucking stupid? Maybe it's a combination of both. I don't really know. But even just the other day, I was streaming and me and all the commentary guys brought on this individual named Jalen, who's a shining trans queen activist who does YouTube videos. And Brianna, you know Jalen, I think a little bit, yeah.
I do.
Well, Jalen's someone who like I feel bad for because they seem to be someone who is clearly mentally ill. I don't know what they have. But even beyond that, they just like they were talking about how they donated or they invested 50 grand in Dogecoin and lost 30 of it. And now they have 20 grand and then they're like losing it all. And they think they're going to get evicted from their apartment because they have like debt to pay off from buying like toys or something. It's just a train wreck situation. And so it's like, do I have a responsibility to not engage with this person because I think there may be something wrong with them? They're a public figure with hundreds of thousands of subscribers who gets hundreds of thousands of views, millions of views monthly even. And they're choosing to come on a live stream repeatedly because they seem to find it entertaining to watch themselves get blown the fuck up. This person is someone I've known about for years, who 2 years ago was like this, where on one hand they would be upset about, racism or transphobia or stuff like that, and then would hop on Discord and call a black kid a dirty N-word. And it's like, at what point is this person like, not able to be called out? Like realistically, I'm sure there's some level of mental illness going on, but at the same time, like if they wanted to fuck off, they've been offered advice from hundreds of people over the past few years and they've taken zero of it.
So I feel like I have to defend Jalen just this much. Like Jalen is an adult and she can make her own choices. Jalen is someone who is on the autism spectrum, and Jalen at her core is a good person. But it's also really clear to me that the public spotlight is not aiding to her making good choices. And like I had a certain point with Jalen where I'm like, the most ethical thing I can do is kind of step away, right?
Yeah.
So like I don't want to hurt her. I just, I truly wish her well. She's got some real stuff, and I think she's got talent that I hope she can address her issues.
Do you think that people
Yeah.
Do you think it's immoral to, or I guess unethical, I don't know, whatever. Do you think it's bad, broadly speaking, to interact with Jalen as a public figure? I mean, obviously you decided to step away for your own reasons.
It's a choice. I know Jalen enough that I have empathy for her, and I would never hurt her, right? I don't agree with the choices she makes, but I don't, like, I'm an adult, right? I'm not going to go hurt someone who's clearly dealing with a lot. That's the ethical choice that I make. I also think at some point Jalen is responsible for Jalen's destiny, and there's nothing I can say or do that is going to alter that, right? So does that make sense?
That makes sense. Here's another example, since big picture vagueness seems to be, we're having trouble with that one, which Wick, you'll appreciate this. Are you guys all familiar with 𝙬𝙗𝙗𝙧𝙚 at all? He's like a big YouTuber. And
only vaguely. I don't know any of you actually, but yeah.
Okay, 𝙬𝙗𝙗𝙧𝙚, big YouTuber, like a few million subscribers, came up a few years ago on like gaming stuff and being a funny guy. More recently, he was kind of schizo tweeting all the time. He tweeted out this picture of whatever the British trans girl that died was. He tweeted out, he was like, "She's hot." And people were like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? She's dead. She's like 16, all this stuff." Keep in mind, he's like 22 or something. And then beyond that, he was accused of, I think he was accused of sexual assault and stalking by this girl he used to know. And now he's like having a mental breakdown every day because he's mentally ill. Am I supposed to like absolve him of his actions or not interact with him or not call that out or talk about it? Like, what's my kind of interaction supposed to be with that person? As someone who has a large platform myself, is it irresponsible to make a video about it, given the fact that he seems to be in a perpetual state of mental breakdown mania, every single day?
I think it's neutral to the decision to make the video. This is how I view this. It's neutral to make a decision to make the video, and then how you make the video will determine if it's moral or not moral.
Yeah.
Because I think if you cover it in like basically the maximally, like if you want to be, I think the most virtuous you can do is be really honest and not hide any of the facts or anything to build any narrative. And this is how I view it, at least. And also, if you want to be extra point giving, doing like compassion for both sides. So basically like talking about the human elements that both pieces of the individual. So both the girl that's making the claims and also like 𝙬𝙗𝙧𝙚. But I don't know. I think like having these like, I actually think there's a benefit to having these like neutral TLDRs of drama, because I remember like, I don't know if you guys remember back in like old internet when like these dramas would pop off, but there wasn't ever like these TLDR videos that like covered all the details. So nobody knew what the fuck was happening ever at any time. And people would like, there's actually greater amounts of like incorrect information going on about the situation because there wasn't like one collective. But again, if you're building narratives and lying about the person, well, okay, well now you're
right. It's good to have an archive. I would agree with that. Wick, do you mind if I
please
steer this conversation just a little bit? Just because I'm curious what the panel would think.
Okay.
So one of the bigger controversies this year from a fellow video essayist that I am kind of a fan of is called Sunny V2, and he made a video called it was like why Chris Tyson could be Mr. Beast's nightmare, and it was a story. It was a video covering a trans individual who's on Mr. Beast's team. He's like one of the main stars, obviously one of the biggest, YouTube channels in the world. Obviously, trans used to be male and was publicly presenting as male. Now is publicly presenting as female, I believe, but I think goes by any pronouns, so don't worry about tripping up with that. And Sunny made a video speculating on how Chris being trans could negatively contribute to Mr. Beast's career. And through that, he was speculating on like, his marriage and stuff like that is falling apart. And, this is when it seems to end. And he's not seeing his daughter anymore, stuff like that. So I'm curious what you guys think about the ethics of making a video covering, let's say, potentially something like transness, which, however positive you guys want to be, there's certainly demographics in the world that aren't open to trans people being out. Is it immoral for Sunny to make a video speculating on how that could affect Mr. Beast's career?
I think it's important that we say what we're talking about here is like, this is basically an op-ed at this point. This is an opinion piece. This isn't just like a covering of
I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of mixed. I mean, he was basically trying to express it like he thought that there was enough negative public sentiment around it that it could cause an issue for the channel, basically.
Well, if
I'm
I made a
speculating,
video,
right?
if I made a video about how I'm worried about turkey tongue around young women, I don't know that there's going to be any problems with it, but a lot of people have DM'd me and expressed to me that there's maybe some issues around him and young women, and you know, just speculating on that. I think that would be kind of shitty of me to do, right? It would
Right.
be
Well,
this
would you
kind of
say
like driving
would
the
you say
issue
that
is
that's
it's
the same
not-
thing though?
No, it's not analogous, right? This is why like these types of content things are so difficult, and that like speculating about like whether or not somebody has actively done crimes is different than speculating about the future trajectory success of a channel, right? In that they're disanalogous in that you're projecting about the future, which everyone knows is uncertain, and also in the other you're speculating about potential crime, right? So like these are disanalogous for like at least these two reasons. Which is why I would say like the op-ed piece. I haven't watched Sunny the video, so I can't weigh in strongly. But if it's literally just like I think that this is going to be the outcome, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You're allowed to
I
have
personally did not
speculations.
like that video at all. I don't want to say irresponsible. That's too strong a statement. I also think that there is a point that the extremely online trans community needs to be more comfortable with people expressing their free speech, which is not always going to be in positive terms, right? I think Turkey Tom, my assessment of your work is it is more journalistic in nature than what that video is, which is why I watch your channel more. So I personally really did not like that video. It affected my impression of who that person was and my trust in their coverage of anything.
I guess my
thought
question
it
would be like,
was-
what
hold on,
about the
let me
video?
finish. I thought it was
Sorry.
very lazy. But I don't think there's like an ethical problem with them making that. Does that make sense?
I guess my question would be, what about the video specifically rubbed you the wrong way? Was it just that speculation in general?
Just a bunch of crazy speculation. I think it's the same as Destiny, forgive me for saying this. There are a lot of really weird people out there that speculate about your personal life in a way that is tremendously uncomfortable to watch from the sidelines. And it's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, y'all, this is really gross and weird and inappropriate. It felt exactly the same to me.
So was it less about the trans thing and more about just the personal dissection of Chris's life?
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. Okay, all right. That's a take I haven't heard yet. Okay, cool.
Noted.
One thing I was going to actually maybe bring up, it's a slightly, so if you're not done on
Go ahead.
this rail, okay. I think when we're talking about consent for mentally ill people, a lot of times what we're actually talking about is like somebody's ability to decision make, because it's not just about whether they've given consent, it's about whether or not like we believe in their capacity to make good decisions.
We're talking about informed consent, right? Yeah.
Yeah, informed consent and decision making abilities, right?
Mhm.
And so I think like probably the most, and this is why I think like making policy about this shit is a really bad idea, because I think like knowing about like people's ability to consent to things is going to vary both over time, right? This is a very notorious issue with an addiction treatment, for example, where like most people would argue that when you're going into a treatment center and you have two options, which is jail or treatment, it's not really informed consent, especially if you're detoxing actively right now. You're not really agreeing to the program. You're not really like, even if the program's like you have to commit for 3 months and like you don't get your cell phone, and they'll be like, everyone knows, every person who's in addiction, who's avoiding going to jail, is going to sign off and agree to all of these things. But it's not really consent, which is why most treatment centers that are solid impose like quarterly consent releases where they continue to consent to treatment. But we also have to remember that like people can be unable to make a decision on some topics, but can make decisions on other topics, right? So like, I don't know if I would trust a person with PTSD to make a super good decision about whether or not they can like handle something that might be like trigger adjacent, because they might say that they can, but that I don't know if I would trust their assessment on that, but they might still be able to make completely informed decisions on like who they have sex with, for example. And so I think like, even when we're talking about like streaming stuff, there's probably some stuff that a mentally ill person can consent to and informally consent to for streaming, and other things that maybe they can't as much. And I think this is another element as to just why you just can't make policy about this stuff.
Yeah. That's well
Okay,
said.
fair enough. Gang, we are kind of looping at this point. We're circling the drain. We're gonna get to the closing statements, and then if you're amenable to it, I have some callers who want to call in and ask some questions. So I'll bring a couple in on if that's okay. And if you're in the audience, gang, and you like this content, you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you want on, join the Discord and jump backstage. And yeah, get in line, gang. And we'll see what we have to see. But I want to give everyone here an outro first and an ability to kind of speak their truth, if you will. And we're going to start in the reverse order we went. So Xena, you're up.
I think that we need to spread more awareness to mental health, and yeah, I think that, I think it's important. As somebody who's mentally ill, I mean, I'm entertained by it too, as long as, like I said, it's not too far. They're not harming someone, physically harming someone, or physically harming themselves, but there should still be some form of awareness to it, and just maybe not promoting it, or like Erudite said earlier, purposely trying to trigger people into having episodes. I do think a lot of what Destiny said kind of covered a lot today, Erudite and Destiny. I also, what is your name? Brianna, right? Brianna, I like a lot of what she said as well. I mean, everybody had something interesting to say. Wick, you kind of are just saying you want to regulate it and just end supporting it, but at the same time you want to talk about it. So it's like, I still don't exactly know where your stance is on this or whatever. And then what else did I want to say? Destiny, they asked me to ask if you were on the spectrum.
Always. I'm on every spectrum, yes.
There you go. And then I have nothing else to say. Follow me at Xena the Witcher on almost everything. Instagram, Twitter. On Kick, it's Xena the Witch. And then on, Twitch, it's Xena_the Witch. You can find me.
Check her out, gang. Thanks for coming on, and I appreciate being here. Hopefully you'll be able to understand me next time. Tarky Tom, go ahead.
Tarky Tom, back at it. Yeah, my opening statement pretty much reflects how I feel. I don't feel personal responsibility for content creators that I may cover on my channel. So, yeah, that's about it. Everybody's responsible for their own shit. So get your life together. What's that AA's thing? God, give me the strength to change the things I can change, not change the things I can't change. I can't change FouseyTube. That's my closing statement. Thanks for watching.
Oh, thanks.
Xena sucked in this debate. Everyone else did excellent. Thank you all for being here.
Fair enough. Erudite, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like I made my opinion pretty clear for the most part. I think watching this stuff is completely neutral and fine. I think if you're covering it and you're being exploitative intentionally or lying and manipulating, then you're a bad person because you're being exploitative, lying and manipulating. Other than that, I think it's too complicated to rely on YouTube to police this. So yeah, you can find me at Not So Erudite everywhere: YouTube, Twitch, Kick, Twitter, but not on Rumble.
Thank you. You've given me a lot to think about.
Thanks for coming, Erudite. Really appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Next up, Destiny.
Ain't no way.
Good one. My statement from the beginning hasn't changed. I'm disappointed that Wick seems so opinionated on this and didn't come with us with a strong policy. So, I'll say fuck Wick. And
Hashtag
I think that.
Are you doing coke right now?
Oh, also speaking of the platform being the mentally ill, Mr. Girl got his YouTube channel back as of like 3 minutes ago.
Oh,
fuck!
Oh,
Glad that we
no.
could broadcast that to my entire channel.
Oh,
Thank you for letting
no.
everybody know so they can go boost in the algorithm.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
He'll be in jail soon enough. It'll be fine.
He'll get jacked. He's coming for you. Don't speak ill.
Fair enough. Brianna Wu, go ahead.
Yeah, something I wish we'd had a chance to talk about tonight is it's kind of the opposite problem that, especially with my job right now, kind of getting to know so many streamers in this space. A constant that I see is this job, streaming, taking a heavy mental toll on the people that do it. I think that there's a sense with the audience a lot of the time that when they're going after someone really hardcore, that it's entertainment. And I can tell you, I've met enough people in this space that it can really do real damage for people. So I don't think that it's the platform's job necessarily to step in. I don't think, I think there's a certain responsibility you have to manage your own mental illness. But I do think, Wick, you're right that if you want to be the best version of yourself, you can be more conscious of the choices that you make. And, Kyla, something you said one time I really, really loved is you had a discussion about how can we be ethical when we're kind of being mean to each other? I think that's a really good question, right? So I think it's a good thing to ask yourself, like when you start going after someone publicly or amplifying something from someone that's having a mental health crisis, I think it's a good time to just pause and ask yourself if it's something you're really comfortable with. I make that assessment often as yes, right? I have no problem going after someone like Katie, but there are a lot of times that answer is no. And I think it makes you a good person to think about the standards that you hold yourself to.
Katie taking shots. Not even here to defend herself. That's unfortunate.
Well, she blocked you, so
I still don't like. I have no ill will towards her. But anyway, let me bring on a couple callers, and we'll see what they got to say. We'll see if everyone thinks that the people who
Maybe
make money
Katie will
off of
stop
this,
talking.
absolving themselves of all responsibility, was the take that they wanted to take away from here today. Let's find out. Hello,
You too.
you're live, gang.
Can you hear me? You might have to re-add me or something.
No, we can hear
You're
you.
good.
What you got?
Cool. Yeah, I don't know. I just my thing is, I think like having a mental health crisis button on like as a part of a report, or like going through something mentally ill, yeah, something like that. I think having that option for reports is fine. I mean, it can get abused. I understand that, but like that it still goes to like YouTube. They review it, and then like it'll be imperfect. But there's a bunch of policies on YouTube that are already imperfect, so it's like it'll improve over time, and like maybe they'll get better at it over time to like actually identify when somebody's like just like self-destructively manic and shit like that. So I think like that would be my policy. I would say having a mental health crisis button or something like that. I don't know.
Izzy, what you got?
Yeah, I actually kind of wanted to speak to a point that was brought up earlier about like when we were talking about Fousey specifically, that like he's in terms of like his position in life right now, like he's actually like he's making a lot of money, and obviously he has like a incentive to kind of play up with some of his like crazier shit, and it's like at the end of the day it's kind of hard to feel terrible for him because of like the fact that YouTube makes him a lot of money, and that usually when someone's like mentally ill, it's not just the mental illness that fucks them over. It's kind of the fact that it's crossed over with like poverty and like separation from any sort of like support system, like having like family, and that like I don't know. At the end of the day, he's in a position to do something about that, when usually when you are actually dealing with like manic episodes or whatnot, it's also you're in the throes of like poverty, or homelessness or whatnot, and there's like a lot of crossover there.
Mental health crisis button. Having YouTube have another reason to report people. What do you think about that, gang? That's a policy position. Good, bad, ugly?
So you can report a channel because they're having a mental health crisis?
Yeah, pretty much. Or like
I just
they would review it.
I think it'll get weaponized immediately. I think I can just imagine all the gripers. Now they don't even need to look for like slurs or anything on a trans person's page. They'll just report them for mental illness like over and over and over again. I think it would just, for the most part, probably get utilized like pretty poorly. And again, it still is requiring YouTube chat mods to make a decision about whether somebody's mentally ill enough to be there.
Which, by the way, YouTube chat mods are going to be some fucking guy in Pakistan that they contract out in a giant room full of like, call center
Pakistanis can't
people.
figure out if you're having mental health crises or not.
Pakistanis.
Yeah, Tom, it's kind of
Pakistanis being paid $20 an hour. I do not trust. No.
Well, yeah, okay, so like, yeah, that's fair, but it would get better over time. Like, I think it's like, because like, I'm thinking about like Twitch's like sexual content policy, where it's like it's not perfect at all. It's like they fucking get up all the time. People do accidental stuff. It's like certain positions are bad, all that stuff. But it's like I feel like me personally, I feel like it's like that it's working towards something like concrete to like try to like make a stance to say like this is sexual content, this is not. I think that's better than nothing in my opinion. And just like well, that person's doing whatever, and it's definitely bad, and we know it's bad, but we don't care, or we can't do anything about it. I think that's like not true.
I hear that, but also like we've been saying the same thing about like content ID systems and stuff like that for YouTube for a really long time now, and like how that's supposed to be getting better, and it's still getting abused. It's still to the point where you have situations where like maybe you're talking about I'm not even sure if I can say it right now, about like COVID vaccines or whatever, and like you can end up getting like in a lot of trouble for that, even if you're pushing back on really bad misinformation. You can end up getting fucked over for that. I don't really know if I trust something like YouTube, like as big as it
When
is
it
at this point.
when it comes to moderating a
be
site
able
as big
to,
as
like,
YouTube, it's like a literally impossible task, and I think that's what you're getting on. Is like it's just such a big website, it's impossible to moderate. And adding this is like okay, so is it if you're mentally ill at all? Like you need that button? Is it if you're manic? Is it you're mentally ill and you're harming someone? Because then because at that point, if you're harming someone, then that overlaps with the illegal thing. So it's just kind of redundant to not even have it there, right?
I'd say probably just I mean I'd say probably manic state stuff like some type of altered state where you're, like the thinking is like off or whatever. And I don't know, maybe I don't the consequences definitely shouldn't be having the channel removed. Maybe like I don't know, demonetization. I'm trying to think of like consequences. Maybe demonetization. That's the only thing I can really
Oh, I
think of.
see. So if I'm on stream and I have a manic episode, YouTube should demonetize my channel because I'm
Oh,
going through a mental health
like,
crisis.
make
Imagine the PR disaster that would be.
situation worse.
Well, I think promoting it would be also kind of bad. I don't know.
I guess what
My
I'm saying
opinion.
is like it's an impossible task from YouTube's end to even moderate their site right now. It's impossible to add another sort of factor. I mean, that would just sort of I don't know,
we can
be
all
pointless.
acknowledge that there are problems with YouTube's moderation, severe problems with all these platforms' moderation. But does that mean we take away the moderation altogether simply because they're doing it imperfectly?
No one is saying taking away the moderation. No, you're saying
No.
there's a system that exists with severe problems, and we should add like a whole new arm to that system. Basically, I think that's
Yeah.
Or at
Well,
least
I would say,
go on.
I would say let's say okay, I don't know if this actually would happen, maybe but like my feeling is like let's say Pokimane was having a manic episode, they would cut her water off immediately. They would try to end stream, like they would try to do. I feel like they'd try to do something, or at the very least, my team would try to do something. Like I feel like if there was a big enough talent or whatever, like they're gonna try to do whatever they can, like protect them or whatever. So like I feel like maybe it's
That's
like
true, but
not
that's
perfect.
also Twitch, where Twitch is like, best friends with Pokimane or whatever. So they're gonna do, that's why she likes that platform so much. She gets a little bit of special treatment, and I think some streamers prefer Twitch for that reason. And I think that YouTube operates differently, and I don't know. That's why I like YouTube, that they don't give people special treatment.
I have to say, Pokimane is a unique talent. I really like her, and I think a lot of people underestimate what she brings. So I think some special treatment is deserved for what she does.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, to each their own.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on, Q2. We appreciate your contribution. We'll send you off, and we'll bring someone else on. Izzy, anything else before we send you guys to the void?
Take it easy.
Okay, easy sleazy.
No, thanks for letting me on.
Bye-bye. Okay, let's bring on a couple more. Hello.
Yo.
Cameras, if we got them, gang. What do you got for us, Flow Trace?
Yeah. I understand that this is a very difficult problem to have solutions for. I don't think it's something that you can easily come up with ideas for. But I don't like the, insistence that, well, because we don't have any good ideas for solutions right now, there's just nothing we can do. It kind of reminds me of, certain arguments that conservatives will sometimes make in regards to climate change. Well, they'll say, green energy sucks, it's not good enough, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, sure, but like, if we agree this is a problem, then we should probably be trying to work towards those solutions. And it feels like there's probably a lot of, even if we, here today can't come up with like silver bullets, the idea that like there's no ground to be gained, I think it just seems like really sad. It just like shuts down the whole conversation. Like,
Well,
I guess I don't really know that there's a problem.
Yeah, climate change, we know there's a problem. We know that we have to do something or else we're like on a path to disaster. I don't know if we know there's a problem. It would be nice to do something about this, but I don't know if it's like imperative.
Would you... certainly we can disagree about the extent. Would you really say you don't think there's any significant problem with like people being crazy on social media and like there being these massive like gatherings around it where like people are
I think that just
is.
That just is like people are some people are mentally ill.
Well, I agree some people are mentally ill, but like would you not, just because it is doesn't mean it couldn't be a problem or it couldn't be negative that we'd want to like, seek to alleviate, right? Like
I don't seek to alleviate it at all, honestly.
I think that we could recognize certain ways in which content centering on people that are very mentally unstable has negative externalities or negative aspects, and it would be nice if we could like get at some of those negative aspects. Like it's probably not good that like when someone like is super mentally ill like Fousey Tube, there's like all this like revel that is like taken in regards to that person, and like we talked about, or sorry, not we, like you talked about in this panel, there is a huge feedback loop in that. Like I understand like yes, it's not feasible to like try and get to a world where all viewers on Twitch and YouTube do the responsible thing and sit down and say, you know what, we're not going to watch this anymore. But like, it feels like there's probably some gains that could be made.
What's
and
like
it just feels
even
kinda
what's
sad.
like even the give us like a what's like a first step?
Yeah, I think that when you talk about really big streamers like Fousey, these are not just random users that there's a sea of. These are people that these companies have relationships with. Like Kick has a specific contract with FouseyTube. Companies have HR people, have HR departments for their own employees. You know, if an employee at an office had a mental health crisis in the workplace, that's something an HR professional would probably reach out and try and do something about. I don't think it's that crazy to imagine a world where the same could be true of like social media companies, where if you have someone who has like a 50,000 concurrent viewer stream and they're like going crazy on it, you have someone reach up like, hey, you know, we just like to touch base, like just as an absolute first step.
I don't think it's these companies' responsibility, I guess, to deal with their users. I think the users, you know, there's a bare minimum they have to do in terms of legality, and beyond that, I
Why?
wouldn't ascribe it any responsibility. Why?
Yeah.
I just don't trust these platforms to do the right thing or moderate content the right way. I think freedom of speech is important. I think freedom of expression is important. I think people should be able to express almost whatever they want
guess
on these
I
platforms.
super agree that freedom of speech
If I
is
could,
sorry, go for it.
if I could just offer a little bit of extra pushback, I think one of my biggest frustrations is that I think most people would agree being like, yeah, this is like probably not the healthiest thing, right? I think everyone here is agreed to being like, oh, it's like not good. The issue is I don't like the idea of a company doing something so that it just appears like they're doing something when it's completely, wholly empty, vacuous, and useless. I would literally rather us just wait to see if there's a better policy that we can come up with. Like the idea of like, sure, they could reach out, but the only reason YouTube would do that fundamentally would basically be to like clear their name a little bit of basically being like, well, we reached out. And it's like, well, of course, the person who's manic isn't going to care about an email being like, would you like to have access to one of our BetterHelp coupons so you can talk to a licensed therapist? They're going to be like, fuck no. And so I don't know. I'm just,
I super disagree. If the policy didn't do anything, then yeah, I wouldn't support a policy that doesn't do nothing. But like, if a company does a good thing and they're only doing it to save face, it's like, yeah, I kind of like that does cheapen it to a certain degree. But like at the end of the day, a good outcome is a good outcome. So if there are good outcomes to be achieved, I don't really care that much that YouTube's only doing it for like selfish reasons. If anything, I'm glad our society, you know, encourages people even that are selfish to do good things because they're rewarded for it. Like I want to live in that kind of society. So like, if there aren't gains to be made, I 100% agree, but it feels like there probably are at least some kind of gains. And one of the ways, by the way, one of the ways we get better policy is by trying things out. Like certainly social media companies are not going to get ideas or certainly improve upon moderation policies by not doing anything, right?
I just think like the sort of cross issues that would come from that in terms of like content moderation. It seems to me, as someone who is a YouTuber, every time YouTube rolls out content moderation, they end up fucking it up by like deleting a bunch of people's channels and demonetizing 100 people. And this is even with like very pressing issues like pedophilia on the platform. With something like this, which is more kind of like hard to address, it's less clear cut, it's less like line in the sand. I see it as a very tough thing for them to moderate, and for that reason, I would just rather them fuck off.
It'll probably become ableist super quickly as well. You're leaving it up to a bunch of random YouTube mobs to determine who's mentally ill enough, which is also immediately telling mentally ill people that basically other people have to decide for you about your platform. Which, like, yeah, maybe at Fousey's level, I would agree of being like, I'd be comfortable with them choosing to pull the plug on Fousey. The issue is, what about somebody less than Fousey? How do you make the determination? What about somebody who's doing a bit like Fousey, but they're not actually having an issue? Like, I don't trust YouTube moderators to make the decision about somebody being
I want
mentally
to
ill
pass it
enough.
off real quick to Allison real quick, and just to make sure we get through the people we can get through before everyone fucks off, right? So Allison, go ahead.
Completely agree that platforms don't have a responsibility to like tend to the mentally ill, right? But I actually am completely fine with allowing them to basically reserve the right to pull the plug on somebody, for them to just be like, listen, you're an actual train wreck and you're being self-destructive right now. And it's not our job to do this for you. And we're not required to do this to you, but we're going to. Like, I think that's fine. Or, I mean, like, now we have a problem where mentally ill people are getting famous off of it and they're like very incentivized to do it. In the past, you had, I mean, like, already famous people having mental illness episodes and people were like invading their privacy. So like Britney Spears, you know what I mean, had mental illness breakdown. Like, people have always liked watching this stuff. And now there's just like the direct access with everybody walking around with phones in their pocket and being able to upload stuff to social media. Like, when you're fucking crazy, like, you can just whip it out and like it's a whole thing. So sorry to go on, but I think it's totally fine allowing a platform to make that decision. But no, I don't think they should be obligated to.
I mean, I think in a legal sense, YouTube does reserve that right, and they do that right now.
Yeah.
Randomly,
Yeah,
like
and
when
then
what's the okay, I know his fucking name, the black pedo dude, the guy who EDP
EDP.
445, that guy, yeah. They banned him
Yeah.
without legal recourse, without any legal action being taken. They just saw the shit going down and banned him, right? So they do reserve that right. But from my perspective, encouraging them to reserve that right more and try to teach YouTube that that's something I want is a very bad idea. I've had the misfortune of dealing with YouTube's moderation team, and trying to get a decision reversed is fucking impossible. And beyond that, as far as actually dealing with this in like a, where do we draw the line way? If I'm famous on YouTube and all the videos are fine, but then I use that YouTube money to go buy heroin and shoot up, right before I stream, is that YouTube's responsibility to try to stop me? Like, should people be pushing YouTube to stop me? Because, technically, let's say I live in a country feasibly in the next few years where heroin is legal, okay? Like, I'm not technically doing anything illegal or wrong. I'm just shooting up heroin, and it's within the eyes of the law. It's perfectly fine. But I'm still clearly harming myself, and the money I'm getting is only money I could probably get through YouTube, at least the amount of money. So I just think that it's kind of, I don't know, ridiculous and like impossible to
extremely
deal with.
ridiculous.
And
When we talk
I
about,
think
But on top of that, like 𝙎𝖎𝖘𝙧𝙚 said, you don't know who's actually mentally ill or if it's a bit. So that's honestly stupid. And then there's also platforms like where we're talking about like Fousey, like Kick. Most platforms are leaning towards freedom of expression. They're trying to, for example. So why would they then go full 1984?
I mean,
Like,
in an
I
ideal
think
world, I get
at
what you
least
guys are
acutely
saying. I don't know your
psychotic
names.
people, when we talk about
It's all
drawing
good.
the line, like I think acutely psychotic people or people who are like, even if it's a bit, I'm fine with like catching some strays, like protecting acutely psychotic people. Like if you're too good at acting like you're acutely psychotic and you get like something happens to you, like I don't know. And again, I don't think they should be obligated to do this, but I think it's fine for like do y'all know the
I don't
Shelley
think they
Duvall
should. I think
interview?
it
The
could make it
doctor
worse.
said
Like
with her?
somebody like me, for example, when I'm going through shit, like I don't like to, regular jobs aren't good for me. I have anger issues. If I'm told to do something, I'm more opted to harm. So I have punched people at work. I've gotten fired for work for taking bottles and busting it on people's heads. So why wouldn't streaming and being on a platform where I'm at home expressing myself and getting paid to do that, monetizing off that, versus, oh, well, you're being too crazy, we're going to cancel you. So now my form of income is taken. Now I'm going crazy because now my income is taken. My platform that I worked hard on and built it, now I'm definitely going to go through a manic episode and go crazy and probably go out and beat the fuck out of
Did
somebody
those
just to get
jobs
my
not
rage.
have
I don't know
fired
if we
you?
can.
It's like retarded. I'm
I don't-
talking about me, of course.
Sure.
I don't know
But
other
those, should
people.
those
I just
jobs
my
not have
tendencies.
fired you for engaging in that behavior? Like you were obviously being
I
very disruptive, you were hurting people, you were hurting others. Your job probably should have fired you for doing that, right?
I just when did I say I didn't get fired from it? That's what I was saying. I
I'm,
can't
I'm
be in regular
yes.
jobs.
What I'm saying
Oh,
is,
absolutely, yes.
yes,
That's
Yeah,
different
it's just like
because I'm bringing bodily
I
harm to somebody.
I feel like when we talk
Yeah.
about these hypotheticals, you can get to like a lot of like really crazy places that absolutely could happen, but like shouldn't necessarily inform all of our policies.
You
Like,
say it's
possible
crazy
for, like,
places,
a-
but they do literally happen.
No,
They do literally happen in practice.
I understand they do literally happen, but I think it's a matter of like how often, if we run this experiment 100 times, how many things do that? Because I feel like you can get to really bad places. Like, if we have an alcoholic at the bar, if the bartender cuts him off, maybe they just go home, get drunk, and then because they're in their home, they engage in domestic violence. Like,
So-
these are fair concerns, but like, I think like these are probably not the things that are going to
Yes, but this is different
more
because
than-
once again, the bar comparison is not analogous because the bar is a very small controlled environment in which there's like literally one path for this person to get fucked up versus on
No, there's not.
YouTube. It's like an impossibly complex
They can
thing.
leave the bar. They can go to another
With-
bar. They can go to a store. They can go to their home where they already have purchased alcohol. Like that is not a sufficient difference to distinguish these two in regards
Okay,
to this
YouTube
particular
YouTube is like a massive fucking platform. I bottom line
Yeah.
absolutely do not trust them to moderate this website. I
Well,
do not.
I
but
think
these are the
here's the
kinds of
thing,
argu-
right? Here's the
Sorry,
thing.
go.
Hold on. I think we can all agree that there is just reason to have moral concern. I think the moral concern is fine. The problem is policy making to abet our moral concern can be really bad policy because it's not thought out. And so this is why I'm saying I think the policy that already exists with TOS does actually account for these things. If they do crimes, if they do a bunch of like violent and dangerous,
Mhm.
reckless behaviors, they could get banned. But I don't want a policy stanza of YouTube's moderation to say if you're mentally ill enough or anything similar to that. I don't want TOS to include mental illness as a justification for a ban. But I'm
Yeah.
fine with them doing reckless behavior, reckless endangerment, violent crime, like any form of crime, right? And other TOS behavior, which is what we're actually concerned about with a manic disorder. But the idea of just saying, just because you're manic now we're going to pull the plug. I think it's this
I would agree with
precedent
that.
of policy that I think is a really bad idea.
Last thing, Allison, then we're going to cycle one more time, then I'm going to play Starfield after we cycle it one more time. But go ahead, Allison.
Well, I'm way more worried about people dealing with psychosis than people dealing with mania. And like mania can feature psychosis, but for me, the bar of like where I think it's fine to show like a lot more concern for the person is like when they are literally detached from reality because of mental illness. So
Sure. I guess like I would wonder like the main form, like I remember I've had a number of clients with psychosis that were also on YouTube, and the issue was like none of their content was actually a problem. They were just like talking endlessly in like VODs about like all of their delusions, right? And it's like I'm not actually like worried about that. What we're actually worried about is people in psychosis doing something violent or something harmful to themselves. And so that's why I'm like I'd be more comfortable with policy about like self-harm type things and like policies around harming others than I am ever about banning mental illness.
Well, thank you
yeah,
both.
I definitely agree with it shouldn't
Last
be like
word, Allison, then we're going to cycle.
Even in my perfect world, it wouldn't be like justification for a ban. There'd be some like reserve right to like shut down a single
Deprioritize
stream
on the
if a
algorithm.
person is just like losing it. But again, there would not be any obligation to. I'm just fine with people stepping in every now and then.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you again, Allison and
Yeah,
Flortrace.
much love.
Okay, last two, and then we'll close it out for the night. Hello, 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 you're live. Toyava,
Oh my god.
and Stardust. What you got for us?
Do you want to go first, Stardust, or?
Yeah, sorry, just give me 1 second here.
Not even fucking prepared? What the fuck? Stardust.
Yeah, Stardust, what the fuck?
Sorry.
We're live. There's millions of people watching. You're blowing your one big break moment.
Yeah. Fuck.
Are
Okay.
you getting more nervous?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Okay, I tried.
Okay, I don't know why this isn't working, why it won't show on my stream. Well, like specifically this window. But basically what I wanted to say is, you know, I tend to agree with everybody on this panel. I haven't watched the entire thing, but I tend to agree that people, you know, requiring social media companies to like pull the plug on people, I think is a little bit too far, especially if you're doing a bit where you're pretending to be, you know, having lost your marbles, which, you know, I've done recently. Some people may know. But what I do think is that we need to change this culture, I think, around mental illness, because one thing that really bothers me about the Fousey situation is that you've got somebody who's acting in a really self-destructive way, probably harming himself in future opportunities, and you've got a bunch of content creators and friends around him who are doing like jack shit, really, and kind of enabling him. And I feel like we should collectively be shaming those friends. So like when somebody is mentally ill and like in a manic state, or even like we were talking about psychosis, right? You want to help them preserve their dignity, and you want to help them protect their future, because those are things that they are incapable of doing in that moment. And you know, another point I want to visit is I heard people talking about institutionalization earlier. While I understand that there are some concerns about institutionalization and the standards we have around it, and how there's like these vast differences in quality of care between different institutions, the institutionalization I think is still preferable than putting somebody in jail, because having a criminal record does affect people's futures, right? And again, people who are in a state of extreme mental illness are not good at protecting their futures.
Responses, and then we'll go to Toyova.
True.
I guess mostly agree. I don't think anyone wanted mentally ill people going to jail. We wanted them in institutions, but not jail.
Except Xena.
I think they should all run free. We are people just like the rest of you.
Like
and unless they're harming people, then yeah, like the extreme
They're
cases,
harming their
I
own
understand.
futures. Their own futures, right? If somebody is harming their own future and they are mentally incapable of being aware of that, there has to be some way that we can like step in.
I'm saying in extreme cases, but like, does bipolar disorder need to be put in an institute because I'm having a manic episode, I need to be institutionalized.
It
Like,
depends on what you're doing in your manic episode, right?
I just don't agree. But again, I'm saying it's more biased because I actually go through that, and it does not help me at all. So
I mean, again, that depends. Bipolar, like, you can. Like, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure for bipolar people, like, manic upswings are usually when they kill themselves. So that might be the most important time to be institutionalized. It just depends.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
not
then
for
that
you,
would be
but
an
for-
Just to be
extreme
clear, hold on.
case.
It's actually the opposite. They tend
Yeah,
to
it's
only kill
opposite.
themselves by like accident. When they kill themselves is typically during depressive. When they die during manic, it's usually
low.
like they do something reckless and stupid.
Yeah, the
okay.
extreme lows. The regular lows are like when you're like in your neutral state. Your highs are like when you just have this boost of crazy inspiration. Like I said, you get creative, you're painting this, or you're like, I don't think I want to live in Florida no more. You pack up your whole house irresponsibly, breaking your lease to drive to the next state because you decided you want to buy a new property and live there. And that's like a super high manic episode. Like I used to do that. Get my glass high, ended up living in Canada and getting married. I was manic.
Yeah, I still think there's a good reason to institute as somebody like who's got multiple friends that's gone through manic episodes. When they got institutionalized, all of like the major ramifications to their life got like vastly decreased. Prevented one guy from getting kicked out of law school. Prevented another guy from getting fired because just like he couldn't keep doing the crazy shit that was going to fuck his life over that his future self would never consent to.
Yeah, yeah, and that again, that is specifically these people are incapable of protecting their futures and protecting their dignity. What do we do when somebody like in a state of psychosis is walking around the street like homeless and shouting terrible things about themselves, right? Like calling themselves like a PDF file, like these are these have real life repercussions.
Thanks for bringing that up. I agree completely. Actually, I think institutionalization is based, and we should bring it back. 𝙎𝖎𝖏, what you got?
Well, I know that a lot of people on this panel have experience with some mentally unwell individuals, and I'm wondering, sometimes this... God, I'm not throwing shade, I swear. But I'm wondering, at what point, like, if somebody who's kind of like, a little bit not well in the head, and they're like being aggressive with you, at what point do you like push back? At what point is it like too much and you have to like stop,
What do you
I
mean?
think
I think if somebody's
physical?
attacking you, even if they got mental illness, I think you're fair to go, whatever. I think that I think there's ethical questions to be had about like platforming somebody's mentally ill and kind of like playing into it or playing it up or profiting of it. But if somebody's attacking you, even if they're mentally ill, I think unless
not
it's
sure
like
if
an
you
You
really
have to
believe
defend
that,
yourself.
though.
If they start harming you, if they start actively harming you, like at that point, whatever they have going on, like that can be understood, whatever. But you gotta defend yourself. If a mentally ill person comes at you, let's say physically in real life with a knife, or let's say publicly in real life if they're making a false accusation or something like that, you have to defend yourself against that and mitigate whatever
yeah.
harm they may cause.
I mean, yeah, defend yourself, but like at the same time,
Well, I'll give you an example, okay?
I guess like at what point do you have to stop being like accommodating and stop being
Sure.
nice to them?
Sure. Let me talk about this because
I
I've
think
had
if
some
they're
experience
shit
with this.
talking you, if they're attacking you and shit
Or
talking you
Sheena
on a
can just
regular
talk.
sense.
Just go off. That's cool. No, just real quick to address this. I've had people come after me, right? To various degrees throughout my life, even on this platform, that I know have mental disorders. They are going through it. They have mental disorders. I give them grace. I understand that they're not in their right headspace. They don't really mean what they say, or even if they do, they're not really in a space where, so there is a point where I'm like, okay, that's fine. Say your shit, talk your shit. I'm not going to punch back. I'm not going to do anything like that. But there is a line that can be crossed where like, I don't care if you're BPD or whatever. I'm going to hit back. I'm not a punching back.
If you're actively harming people, consequences are consequences. End of the day, right?
You have
Yeah.
to be able to defend yourself and care, like be able to live.
Do you think there's like some ethical responsibility to like at least attempt like some kind of like mutual understanding before you start pushing back?
I give them more grace than I would say someone who I know is perfectly sound of mind. coming at me. I
I
give
think
them a little
that's
more
so
grace.
soy. If like I just have this rule, because even me, like mentally deranged or whatever, if I'm coming at you and I'm pressing you and I'm talking shit to you, like just talk shit back like you would a regular person. The
Why?
difference
You're
is
not a
like how
regular person, though.
wait, but yes, I am. We're all people. But like I said with erudite, like how she had brought up before. Now, if you know, like I have this like triggering point, like about, for example, technology or aliens. Let's just say aliens or something like that, and you start purposely bringing that up to bring me to a point where I'm now in an episode and I'm skitzing out, that's different. If you're just like, shut up, bitch, you a dumb asshole, and we're going back like regular, I think that's fine. I'm not gonna be gentle to somebody. I don't give a fuck if you're what your race is, what your age is. If you're a kid talking shit, I'm talking shit right back at you. Same in the streets. If a
So an
kid is coming at
8-year-old
you, I'm
starts talking
slapping.
shit, you're gonna
If
talk
a
shit to that
kid is
8-year-old?
I talk shit to kids, but I just have this rule. If I'm in the streets and a little kid comes and kicks me, I'm gonna slap the kid in the back of his head. Like, what you thought this was? You want to be an adult? You didn't treat like an adult. Like,
Look,
no,
I think the
that's
only
weird.
no.
I
I'm gonna
think
pop
the
him in
only
the back of his head.
responsibility is to not actively go out of your way to harm someone if they are not harming you. If someone's being crazy around you or manic or whatever, I don't think you have a responsibility to help them. It's a good thing to do to help them, or if they're attacking you, to understand where they're coming from. I don't think you're responsible for that, though. I think you're only responsible for your own person. And beyond that, if someone tries to fuck with you, no matter what the reason is, you're well within your right to do whatever you want back. Not
Right.
whatever you want, but within reason.
Male,
Okay.
female, child, white,
Well,
black, doesn't matter.
on.
Defend
Switch up the
yourself.
I don't.
I guess
don't
this is
treat
where I get
children
into like the elements of like mental health training. Like I think a lot of people feel like mental health is really obvious how to deal with, and it not always is. This is where like some like mental health first aid training can be really helpful to the average individual. Because like as somebody who's worked with lots and lots of mental health, the way I deal with like a hyper aggressive person in a psychotic episode is really, really different than like a non-psychotic aggressive individual. But part of that is about like me understanding, mostly through like training and empirical literature, how to best de-escalate each type of individual.
Okay.
Personally.
Okay.
And on that note, gang, it has been quite the show. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the content, follow me on Kick. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for being here. Go check out all these wonderful individuals. But we're going to say adios. Adios. Bye-bye. Bye.